My Plastic Shaman, A Lurid Neon Nightmare by Judas Davis. This book is dedicated to Apurva, the nurse from the ward who told everybody that I was probably writing about her in my psychotic manifesto. Your memory will live on only in the preliminary pages of this book, as you do not appear in any actual scenes. Your presence certainly bothered me, but there was absolutely nothing about you that made you interesting enough to dedicate a chapter to, except perhaps for your massive forehead, which glistened like an oily mirror of flesh. Hundreds of anorexic patients probably examined the reflection of their emaciated bodies in the shining pool which was the space between your eyebrows and your hairline. One day, Apurva, somebody will think of you for the very last time. Remember this. Read these words and let them bounce around in your abnormally large cranium, like a screensaver, for as long as you live. To Kylie, the girl who tattooed an X on her forehead. You deserve a mention, too. More than perhaps anyone else, you were a true inspiration, and while I only talked to you in real life twice, I couldn't have written this book without you. I will always admire you for stabbing the real-life equivalent of a young Dudu the Master. I constantly consider sending you a copy of this book, although I fear you will track me down and sacrifice me to Satan for writing it. I have recited your eulogy in my head hundreds, perhaps even thousands of times, although I cannot possibly predict how you will die. Fly low, you crazy-ass hoe, I'd probably say before walking off stage. No disrespect intended, of course. God, please fuck my mind, for good. Captain Beefheart. Reality is not for them to understand. No more waiting for them to pat you on the back and say you get it. Reality is not theirs and they do not understand it. They are not the truth, nor do they understand the truth. They are liars, completely, even to themselves. There is nothing to discuss with them. Our point is only to dominate. Our being is only to dominate. Our mission is only to dominate. All of this world is mine, and it is time that you leave. Death Sentences by Dr. Matthew C. Harris. A suicide note from the author found in a train station bathroom scrawled on an extremely long piece of toilet paper. Yes, if you have ever even mildly irritated me, I have probably written about you in this book. Certain details have been changed, of course, but I kept the really nasty stuff in there, such as your addiction to huffing air duster or your fetish for dental headgear. Like the tiny leaden devil inside a translucent prism, which is famously displayed at the Kunsthistorisches Museum. You are now trapped behind glass, the most humiliating moments of your life on display for everyone to see. If for some reason your masochism compels you to read this book, you can download a copy of it for free on my website. I would prefer not to be added to any more watch lists that my name hasn't already been listed on for the last decade or so. I, the author of this book, am not a threat to anyone or anything, on a physical level at least, besides myself. However, the book itself may be. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is completely intentional and malicious. If you think any one of these stories is about you, your country, your ex-girlfriend/boyfriend/corpulent flesh vessel of indeterminate sex, or the store in San Francisco that sold you poppers under the counter when you were 17, it probably is. I am not going to begin every story with a disclaimer that I am allowed to write the things that I do, because I am a mentally challenged, first-degree Michelin with distant Thai ancestry who has been touched, tormented by the thoughts in my own unstable but unfathomably brilliant and profoundly clever head before. Although this is true. If you demand that I explain or apologize for anything written in this book, just be aware that you have signed a waiver that allows me to use your likeness in any way that I see fit. You will become the blueprint for a minor character in my next novel. You have the right to exercise your freedom of speech, just as I do. Just make sure that when you leave a scathing review, you use a burner count, and there are no images of yourself on your page. I can make you die of a scopolamine overdose while hallucinating that your dead grandmother, who has been reincarnated as a giant floating fetus with teeth, is gnawing the flesh off your face. And I will send an image of you to a practitioner of ancient sonic sorcery, and pay them $300 to mold a figurine of you out of the brood ball of a dung beetle, and stab it through the heart with a nail from a sunken ship. This book is a compilation of half-truths, real stories, and blatant lies. I will leave you as the reader to determine which is which. I have been cursed to walk this earth as an unheard and forgotten prophet ever since the 6th grade, when I wrote a story about a boy named Cal Lobster, who commits a Virginia Tech-level atrocity at his school, armed with a proton pack from Ghostbusters. You must navigate your way through this book with no glossary, table of contents, or foreseeable method of escaping the constant torture. The same way I had to when I lived through the actual events which inspired this book. My Plastic Shaman is a heartwarming story about everything that makes America great. Serial killers, cults, acts of terrorism, governmental conspiracies, folkloric monsters, drag queens, heavy metal, the opioid crisis, political extremism, plastic surgery, the horrors of aging, pornography, celebrity worship, spontaneous combustion incidents, and Michael Jackson. To Vivian Medrano, Jared Leto, Tom Cruise, and Michael Jackson's estate, sue me. Mail an anthrax letter to my house. I can take it, shove me down, and pound my ass, which is even whiter and tighter than Michael Jackson's was, into the ground next to Michael Jackson's grave. You'll have to drag me off stage at the open mic night, hosted inside the local vegan cafe, and beat me to death with your own bare hands if you want me to stop. You cannot buy my silence. I cannot be held legally liable for any bodily, emotional, mental, sexual, or psychic damage you may endure as a result of being exposed to the contents of this book. In 1,000 years, someone will dig it up and promptly put it right back where they found it. They won't even send it to a history museum. They will ask themselves who wrote such a thing and why, and they won't even touch it out of fear that if someone ever read the entire novel, they'd become possessed by some sort of ancient evil, that they would be compelled to go forth and annihilate everything that exists. This book is my baby. It is my hideously deformed, one-eyed Agent Orange baby. It came into this world kicking and screaming, and to this day it refuses to shut its gaping maw. It is unreadable, unpublishable, and its cursed existence will certainly make me permanently unemployable. It is completely incomprehensible, offensive, and disturbing to each one of the 6 senses. It is a profoundly narcissistic piece of masturbatory drivel that is not intended to appeal to or make sense to anyone other than myself and maybe 2 other sickos. I would not recommend it to anyone. Signed to JD. Kicking the habit. So, the therapist checked her notes. Sam, how many tubes of deodorant do you usually go through in a week? 1, 2, 5? Sam/Samuel/Samantha Psychos sat in a plastic chair, jiggling his leg. Fawn was dressed for a funeral. Fawn wore a white-brimmed hat with a veil that was designed for victims of acid attacks, along with a pair of dark sunglasses and a trench coat. Sam paused before answering in the flat, low voice of an autistic podcaster. 20, maybe? So what purpose does this ritual fulfill for you? Does it have something to do with cleanliness? Do you think it's related to your obsessive-compulsive tendencies? Do you feel like it comes from a desire to have control over some aspect of your life, no matter how insignificant? I think I just like to eat deodorant. The therapist sighed. Sam, we have to get to the root of this problem, or else we'll never figure out how to treat it. There is no specialized facility for this sort of thing. If we decide to send you to treatment, you'll have to choose between rehab and a residential facility for eating disorders. Triple Sam was a paranoiac and a professional neuroticist to the degree where it affected every aspect of Shiz's life. Fawn was terrified that people were constantly watching Shim, tracking Shiz's every move and plotting to harm Shim. This, along with Shiz's intense phobia of the sun, body dysmorphia, and rapidly fluctuating gender identity, led Shim to constantly change Shiz's appearance. Over the years, Fawn had accumulated a vast collection of disguises. To mention just a few items in Shiz's arsenal, Sam owned around 17 wigs, 8 pairs of colored contact lenses, and at least one of those huge visors you frequently see little old ladies in Korea wearing. Nobody could describe what Sam looked like or determine whether Fawn was a man or a woman, and neither could Fawn. Initially, Sam had developed an addiction to eating deodorant because Fawn had a crippling fear of halitosis. Fawn never actually had bad breath, at least not to Shiz's knowledge, but when Fawn was younger, Fawn certainly looked like someone who would. In middle school, Sam was a fat kid with greasy hair, and the other children would snicker as Fawn waddled down the hall. They'd say that Fawn probably had the pungent odor of kasu marsu, a rare and expensive Sardinian cheese which contained live maggots. By high school, Sam had lost the weight, but the mental scars that Fawn carried from Shiz's days as Big Cheesy, or alternatively Triple Cheese, still remained. Fawn doused himself in thousands of different niche fragrances. Depending on the day and time, Fawn often smelled of frankincense, myrrh, Byzantine spices, and/or graveyard dirt. It was counterintuitive because many people thought that the overpowering scent of Sam's perfume and cologne was obnoxious, but Fawn didn't really operate according to logic. Sam brushed his teeth before and after every meal and carried gum everywhere Fawn went, but Fawn was also addicted to nicotine, which Fawn feared counteracted the effects of everything else and made Shiz's breath smell terrible. This was how the deodorant problem started. At first, Fawn had to shove it down Shiz's throat with tears welling in Shiz's eyes, like the star of some fucked up porno film. But Fawn found that the deodorant was just an acquired taste, and over time, Fawn developed a Stockholm Syndrome sort of relationship with it, growing to not just tolerate, but enjoy the flavor. Within a few months, you could barely walk through Sam's room because the floor was covered in a sea of empty deodorant tubes in all different scents, sizes, and colors. His favorite was cherry almond. Sam's parents tried and failed to stop Shim from eating deodorant in every way that they possibly could. For a while, they would only buy m.n.m.d.r deodorant, that awful-smelling stuff that only adolescent chronic masturbators wore. Then when that didn't work, they decided that they would lock up the deodorant and lock Shim inside the house, so Fawn could not possibly go to the store and shoplift more. Eventually, they just gave up, and accepted for that as long as Sam was alive, they would just have to deal with having armpits that stank of roadkill. They dumped all the deodorant in toilet water. Surely Sam wouldn't eat it then, they thought. Fawn did. By this point, the deodorant was just a piece of simulacrum, completely detached from its original purpose. It had stopped having anything to do with preventing halitosis a long time ago. And even if Sam was cured of the phobia that kickstarted the whole ordeal, Fawn wasn't sure if that would help at all. Like everyone in America, Fawn went about Shiz's life as if Fawn had randomly spawned on Earth with all the habits, tastes, and identity markers that define Shim. Fawn didn't really know why Fawn did the things that Fawn did, and as a result, Fawn did not know how to fix Shiz's self-inflicted problems. So the deodorant eating would continue for the foreseeable future until Fawn was sent to COD, which stood for Center of Discovery, not Call of Duty, where Fawn would be treated for quote-unquote bulimia, which was actually just involuntary vomiting due to the deodorant. The therapist spoke again. So how would you describe your childhood, Sam? A strong, healthy support system is critical to a child's development. Read this molested-ass book. Read it and weep. Weep for the poor soul who had to write it. Your family says that they are proud that your story about the kind-hearted transvestite prostitute, the first one, got published in a respectable magazine, but they like to give you unsolicited writing advice. They say you should stop writing about things that have never happened to you, such as getting beaten up for cross-dressing or any form of sexual exploitation, like having to sell videos of yourself licking your own armpit to men on the internet so you could buy gray market hormones made in a bathtub in Ukraine. Your father didn't know where exactly he went wrong, even though he was the one who brought you to the art exhibit with the black and white pictures of the lady or guy you couldn't really tell lying on the bed with needles everywhere when you were 7. They said that ever since you were a kid, you yearned for destitution and squalor. That was why you kept doing stupid stuff so that they would send you to St. Mary's Adolescent Psychiatric Unit in San Francisco, where you got to sleep in your own separate room because it was run by nuns or something, and homosexuals couldn't have roommates. Even at such a young age, you had a strong sense of justice. You threw a chair at the guy who dressed like Weird Al because he wouldn't stop trying to seduce the girl covered in scars who kept everyone up at night with her wailing. He would always play Wonderwall and pumped up kicks on his acoustic guitar. It drove you insane, even more so than you were to begin with. That girl had real problems worth screaming and crying about. Not like you. You just needed to stop touching yourself to the movie where the people would get into car crashes on purpose and do stuff with each other in the burning ruins of the automobile. It is not normal. This is why the doctor gave you Seroquel. Your medicine is good for you, Sam. If you were diabetic, you couldn't just refuse to take your insulin. No, the boy with the shit box is not welcome in my house. Neither is the girl with the pink hair and the tattoo that says the F word in giant letters on her middle finger. No more quote-unquote friends coming over anymore. All your mechanic buddies made fun of you because they thought you were really into fat emo bitches. You corrected them, said they were goth bitches, not emo bitches, and they weren't even that fat. The truth was that it was more of a Stockholm Syndrome type thing. The slightly overweight goth bitches were the ones who came onto you, really aggressive at times, and they were the only girls that were into you. One time you and your mechanic buddies were driving around, and they decided they had to stop at a store and pick up some materials, and someone shouted, "Who the fuck is that tweaker ass, Edward Scissorwrist ass, pasty ass, trenchcoat mafia ass looking motherfucker in the back? I swear I seen bro, or ma'am, or whatever, walking around with a fat ass emo bitch." They all laughed at you. Your dad thought you were sleeping with the pink hair girl because she was somewhat chubby, but you weren't. She just nearly threw up on you once when you guys were on MDMA, and then she started making out with you. I guess you could say she forced herself on you, but you were into it to some degree. That was really it. You developed a fixation on Damien Echols from the West Memphis 3 because he also got thrown in a psych ward for cutting himself and doing weird blood rituals with other dudes that seemed kind of gay. You didn't understand why they accused him of murder just for these things alone. If doing that made you guilty of being a killer, everybody would be in jail, you thought. You also thought he was kind of sexy in a creepy, douchey sort of way. You went online to see if anyone else felt the same way, but nobody was talking about Damien Echols. They were all obsessed with Richard Ramirez the Night Stalker for some reason, even though he was ugly as shit. They smashed in their cheekbones with hammers so that they would look like him. They made edits of him doing a sinister dance in front of a spinning cymbal you did not recognize. Your parents tried to give you a field guide to various types of dinosaurs for Christmas, and you ripped it up, you ungrateful little twat. Me no want dinosaur! Me want copy of Tulsa by Larry Clark! They tried to calm you down with a gummy bear, but you threw it across the room and screeched. You demanded that they bring you a hookah filled with Chinese opium. Our little beatnik, they called you affectionately. They said you should try writing a more wholesome story, about a kitten getting adopted or something, for once. So you did. Bleed me an ocean. In the hidden place, two roads converged. Betwixt them grew a seed. Upon a branch, a crow did perch and warned me from the tree. Those who refused to face the light plucked their eyes out, not to see. The above epitaph originated from the grave of a peasant who was buried in 1684. It was discovered around a mile away from the cabin of a man named Gary Blackwood, who resided in the Yazoo County area. Gary was described as an intimidating but seemingly gentle fellow by the townsfolk. The kind of guy who would never talk, but was always willing to help you change your tire, said one neighbor. Gary was suspected but never convicted of at least 10 murders across Appalachia. In 2003, new improvements in DNA testing helped investigators identify a skull found in the woods behind his house as belonging to a local girl named Rosie Maplewood, who had gone missing decades prior. Like almost all of his alleged victims, she was a pale and nymph-like young woman with a mane of wavy copper hair. Although many girls of a similar appearance had disappeared within a relatively short time period, it was impossible to find the remains of each one because the forests of Appalachia were so dense. There was no way to determine which parts of the lichen-covered ground were covered in microscopic specks of blood. The bodies were hidden beneath the shade of the ancient oak trees, dripping with Spanish moss. The jackalopes had gnawed away at the bones of the girls until they could not be distinguished from the remains of an animal. By the time they uncovered Rosie's skull, Gary was long dead. He had been found lifeless in a trashy motel called the Lover's Retreat by the side of the highway, lying next to the corpse of another man. Police concluded that he had killed the man without a doubt, but at the time they were not able to definitively tie him to any of the other murders. At first they considered the possibility of a ritualistic motive, considering that 3 black feathers were found on the bedside table. This theory was quickly abandoned by everyone save for a few conspiracy theorists. It was determined that a bird had simply entered through the open window, circled around the room, and then flown back out. Gary's autopsy report listed the cause of his demise as undetermined. In another life, maybe Gary would have been a great fashion designer. As of May 13th, 1985, he'd been sleeping in the jacket that he had made every night for 2 weeks. Every time he wore it, he felt like he was being embraced by a cold-blooded, soft-skinned lizard. He would lay on a stained mattress he called his bed, watching a moth circle around the flickering light above him. Gary caressed himself as if he loved himself. The particularly unique piece of custom leatherwork was thin, hollow, and devoid of substance. It made a perfect companion for a man like him. As a young boy, Gary's papa always told him that the Métis used every part of the buffalo, bones whittled into needles and pipes. In Gary's point of view, he was upholding an ancient tradition. He belonged to a rare dying breed of men who were willing to stand up and do something that was painful but necessary. The prey animals weren't the only ones who played an important role in upholding the delicate ecosystem of Appalachia. Gary recalled a time when his mother brought him to the Wax Museum in the 3rd grade. Looking around at the candy-coated corpses, he asked her why they couldn't just fill people up with stuffing and stitch them back up again, the way they had done with Blueberry. Growing up, Blueberry wasn't just his best friend. He was his only friend. By the time Gary had learned how to tie his shoelaces, Blueberry was twice the size of him. Gary told his classmates that he was training to be a cowboy. There were many times when he tried unsuccessfully to ride Blueberry like a horse. He would always end up falling off the saddle, but he never got seriously injured. He was invincible, as all little boys are. Unfortunately, the same did not apply to Blueberry. Every couple of days, Gary would steal $5 from his papa's wallet. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but over time it adds up. It was months before his papa caught on, but when he did, he was furious. And the belt was reserved for more minor offenses, leaving the toilet seat up, raiding the pantry. This warranted a crueler and more unusual punishment. Gary could only watch as Papa dragged Blueberry outside by the chain around his neck. Blueberry could have ripped the man's hand off like he was a teddy bear if he wanted to. But he didn't, and that was the difference between Gary and him. Over time, it would become clear that Blueberry had more restraint. To call Gary an animal was to do disservice to him. Papa tied the dog to the thin wire fence in the backyard and headed back inside. Gary saw him reach for the rifle on top of the kitchen cabinet, next to the mass-produced thrift store painting of Mary weeping for her son. Gary covered his ears to protect them from the blast. He knew what was about to happen, but he couldn't look away. He'd always remembered the expression on Blueberry's face, his mouth hanging open, his limp tongue sticking out. He seemed to smile the same way he did the day Gary brought him home. When Gary was 19, he tried to kill himself. Or so everyone thought. When your mother walks in on you sitting in the closet with a makeshift noose around your neck, you find yourself in the only situation where claiming that you failed at committing suicide is less humiliating than telling the truth. No one ever... When pain is inflicted upon you, the brain floods the body with endorphins. In Gary's head, the whole world was a battlefield, but every day was the 4th of July. The synapses firing inside his skull lit up the dark sky, and it was beautiful for a moment. He had grown to associate pain with pleasure. If he didn't, he wouldn't have survived. These sensations coiled themselves around each other, like two snakes mating, neural pathways forming a braid that couldn't be undone. Gary's parents decided to send him to the mental hospital. He made a friend in there. You could tell that the man had been handsome once. He had a rugged kind of look to him. You could imagine that a park ranger had found him wandering around in the wilderness 2 months after getting lost hiking and brought him there. He would cheek the pills that they gave him, later giving them to Gary, for a price, of course. Gary always had this idea that cum tasted salty, but his was bland and flavorless, like lukewarm stale water left on the bedside for a couple days mixed with cornstarch. Gary didn't remember a single mantra or coping skill they had taught him in the asylum, but his stay there wasn't totally pointless. He did learn a lot there, just not from the people he was supposed to. When they decided that he was fit to return home, he wasn't particularly glad to be back. He had never felt more free than he did in captivity. For the first time, he had felt like he belonged somewhere. He went on to live a relatively normal life, at least for a while. He even started going to church on his own. Before, he only went on Sundays when his parents forced him to. He didn't believe in God any more than he did when he was younger, but he wanted to believe in believing. These people had put so much trust in something that they would never be able to see or touch in their entire lives, and he didn't have faith that the sun wouldn't explode at any given moment. When he was 22, he married a girl named Rhonda that he had met there. She was a spunky redhead with a bit of rough and tumble to her. She always looked slightly unkempt, but beautiful nonetheless. They'd often go down hunting by the creek together. Collecting dead things wasn't an unpopular hobby in Mississippi by any means, but she had no idea about the extent of his morbid interests. He eventually got a job at the local butcher shop. He loved it there. He could come home every night smelling of oxidized blood, iron, and struggle, and she wouldn't suspect a thing. What did start to make her suspicious was his tendency to come home at 3 in the morning. She thought that he was sleeping with another woman. He was jealous of her naivety. What a beautiful world Rhonda lived in. One where an affair was the darkest possible secret he could be hiding from her. One day she decided to snoop through Gary's belongings, searching for evidence left behind by the other woman. As it turned out, the other woman was still in the room, or the pieces of her were at least. His mini fridge was stocked full of rare, expired meats. Gary couldn't bring himself to kill Rhonda, so he told her that if she ever spoke a word about this to anyone, they'd discover her body in the forest, marbled with green-black decay. Or maybe they'd never find her at all, since she'd blend in with the leaves and dirt so well. She filed for divorce a week later. She cited the drinking, the glasses he threw across the room, the tables he flipped over. She always sort of skirted around the truth. Months of court-mandated therapy ensued. Gary had cooked a human liver in the same oven he baked his wife's birthday cake in, and they wanted to ask him if he had ever tried meditation. In July of 1989, he picked up a peculiar hitchhiker in his Chevrolet Impala. The first thing he noticed about her was that her clothes were tattered and torn, but her shoes were perfectly intact, almost as if she had never walked in them at all. She was very evasive. Whenever he asked her about her name, her family, or her origins, she'd find a way to dodge the question. She had a strong, angular kind of face, which he wasn't a fan of. She was, however, a pale redhead. He did like her steely gray eyes. They set her apart, in a good way. He could tell just by looking at the girl that she wasn't worth eating. She was gawky and tall, all sinew and muscle. He used every tried and true method to attempt to break her down, mentally and physically. This girl was not like the others. She did not beg and plead. She did not bother trying to convince him of the sanctity of her life. She was unfazed by his vicious and constant degradation. When he hurled insults at her, she'd just laugh. He tried to starve her, dehydrate her, beat her, electrocute her, and yet she did not seem to grow any weaker, this strange, unkillable girl. He usually enjoyed a long, drawn-out torture session, but at a certain point, the whole routine became monotonous and boring. He would attack her, and she'd play dead for a while, then she'd rise again in the morning, seemingly fully recovered. He had been holding her captive for a little over a month when he finally admitted defeat. "God damn it!" he cried out, pacing back and forth. She was suspended in midair like a living marionette, her arms bound by 2 pieces of rope attached to the ceiling with meat hooks. "What's your name, girl? Where the hell did you come from? And why won't you just die already?" She spat on the ground. When she started to talk, her voice, or rather her voices, sounded remarkably different than before. She spoke with the cadence of a young woman, the guttural half-growl of a beast, and the thick accent of a foreigner from a land which no longer existed. "I am the Bornless One. I have as many names and faces as there are stars in the night sky. To the Israelites, I was Lilith, and to Mohammed, I was Azrael. I have been down to the plantations in Louisiana, and I know why the willows weep. And when Bourbon Street was bustling with souls, I would put on my finest suit and head down to the speakeasy. I am Scorpio, Apophis, Destroyer. I am Osiris, slain and risen. I am the 13th card of the Major Arcana, governed by Pluto. I am that which you call death and that which you call life. I am beyond good and evil, light and darkness, male and female. I am older than Christ, more ancient even than the tree which was chopped down to form the cross itself. I am." She had made it very clear that she wasn't going anywhere. Gary had grown fond of the girl. Her toughness reminded him of Rhonda. And besides, it wasn't like he could just murder her and dump her in a ditch somewhere. He also couldn't set her loose. God knows who she would blabber to. So he decided that she would be his partner in crime, and jokingly nicknamed her Bonnie. She went along with it, and together they killed a few new girls. But she was a jealous and vindictive spirit, and she was not happy about Gary's voracious sexual appetite. One cool night in August, Gary and his new accomplice headed out to a club he hadn't visited for 10 years. The mood was different, somber. Most of the old regulars were nowhere in sight. Over the sound of the Blue Nile's new track, The Downtown Lights, he swore he could hear the laughter of many beautiful, carefree young men echoing through the room, and see them sitting in the now-empty leather seats behind the counter. Gary assumed that the plague had taken them. The few who remained glared at the odd couple, assuming that they were just a bunch of aliens from the straight world who had mistaken the place for a generic dive bar. Only one man smiled invitingly at Gary. He was maybe 25, with messy brown hair and eyes that gleamed brightly. His shirt was partially unbuttoned, and he wore a long necklace with a skeleton key on it. He wasn't tan or athletic, but he seemed healthy enough. Gary thought he looked familiar. He could have sworn he'd seen him dancing by the side of the street while he was driving by in his car, looking for hitchhiking girls. The silver sliver hanging in the sky resembled a grinning, disembodied mouth. The young man must have known that he looked insane, swaying around to the music in his head, but he didn't seem to care. Gary and the girl approached the man and began to chat with him. The man did not usually go anywhere with strangers, let alone 2 of them, but the presence of a woman assured him that he was safe. He agreed to go back with them to their motel room. He had already assumed that the couple had some strange proclivities, so he didn't panic when the girl began to remove his clothes and tie him to the bed. However, when he found himself being threatened with a massive hunting knife, he began to regret his decision. The girl pulled a pair of latex gloves over her arms that went up to her elbows, and the doctor was in. Gary grunted at her. "You know what to do. Got him like a fish." But the man was not submerged inside the lake. The water came from within him. Slowly and carefully she made the incision. A wound ran through him like a river, reaching from the throat down to his groin. When the ritual was complete, the girl climbed into bed next to Gary. She crawled on top of him and cradled his head in her veiny hands, drawing him into a long and passionate kiss. She began to suck the air out of his lungs. She did not stop until she saw his chest cave in and his lips turn the color of granite. He let out one final rattling gasp, something resembling the sound of a dying engine sputtering out. It was over. The hairless body of Gary's last victim lay curled up at his feet like a sphinx cat. After her work was finished, she did what she had always done in these sorts of situations. She opened up the window, slithered out, and started to run. She never headed towards any particular direction. She would simply leave. Wherever she ended up was none of her concern. She had the rest of eternity to explore the whole world. Her head seemed to burst into flames, her long auburn hair trailing behind her, and reflecting the glow of headlights passing by. She became a burning tumbleweed, speeding down the road, and she was gone, gone, gone. She knew she did what had to be done, but at the same time she often missed Gary dearly. After all, he was the only human being she ever met who came even close to knowing death as closely as she did. Still, there were certain things about her that no mortal man would ever be able to understand. Gary accepted her nature, but treated her as if she was an attack dog. It wasn't like she had never taken an innocent life before. She would occasionally feed off of them if there were no other options, but if anything she was more like a border patrol agent of the Vale. She was willing to fight or even kill if she deemed it necessary, but most of the time she simply observed. She was not a vampire, she would not die if she went too long without feeding. It was just an elaborate game to her. The Gary Blackwoods of the world were her favorite victims by far. Men who were sadistic, controlling, and most of all, overly confident in their own abilities. She studied them and their tactics so that she could figure out how to outsmart them. When they were no longer of any use to her, she would either kill them herself, or preferably just drive them to the point of insanity and suicide through mental torture. Throughout the mid to late 1980s, she posed as a wealthy socialite who came from the upper echelons of Staten Island. She dated many hardworking businessmen and siphoned every last penny out of them along with their will to live. Not that she particularly needed money. After all, she didn't need health care or food or a car or any of the other things people in this world rely on. She did it simply because she could. She prided herself on her ability to adapt to the times. In the following decade, she changed up her style. She smeared makeup all over her pale face in the colors of a bruise. Bilirubin yellow, dull purple, murky green, red in the shade of oxidized blood. She frequently wore a cloudy white contact in one eye, making her appear as if she had a cataract. Her hair, which now reached her mid-back, was dyed onyx. Her new look kept away the do-gooders and the Bible thumpers, and her resemblance to a corpse attracted men who were in many ways not unlike Gary. She was a groupie for various different punk and metal bands for a while, and at one point she started her own death rock group called Raspberry Reich, which gained a cult following. They were frequently kicked out of venues as a result of her shocking antics on stage. Her pale limbs were covered in raised crisscross scars from self-mutilation. Her fans held a vigil when her car was found abandoned near a local bridge in 2003. Taking the form of a vulture, she observed as they proceeded down the street holding white candles. From her point of view, it seemed like she was looking up at the night sky rather than watching from above. From a distance, the hundreds of flames looked like tiny stars flickering in the darkness. In the 2010s, an entirely new predator species of egotistical and manipulative males crawled out of the primordial soup. These men were known as aspiring underground rappers, and they plagued every white suburban town in America. Many died at a young age due to their own poor choices, but she preyed upon the ones who didn't. Within no time at all, every Xanax-addicted lowlife in the state had her sigil tattooed on their body, a symbol which archaeologists would research for hundreds of years, trying and ultimately failing to decipher. Night of the Long Underwear. The Sheeran children, Ashlich, Braxton, and Kombucha, were not products of love. They were genetically engineered superhumans, each one designed in a laboratory to fulfill a different, unique purpose. Ashlich was the most beautiful. Her genetic code was altered so that she would inherit the most desirable physical traits of each of her ancestors. Kombucha, the youngest daughter, was docile and sweet. She was not given free will. Essentially enslaved to her creators, she was forced to obey all of their commands. Naturally, she was the golden child of the family. The middle child, Braxton, had rare and unusual physical powers. He was incredibly flexible and agile. He often used his abilities for evil. He could hop fences that were twice as tall as him, break down doors, and easily outrun his parents as well as every police officer who attempted to stop his fun. As a result of a mutation that occurred during his programming, he also suffered from bizarre compulsions. He needed massive amounts of iron and protein to maintain his strength, which led him to develop pica. He experienced intense cravings for roadkill, plastic, and sheet metal. He woke up at 3 a.m. every day to complete a Zambian dworking ritual he found on the internet, which he claimed increased his virility. His room was extremely cramped and small, with no windows, so oftentimes he would break into Ashlich's room and open up the curtains so that he could absorb the rays of the sun. He would play bass-boosted reggaeton on a pair of huge speakers while aggressively thrusting and gyrating in a rhythmic motion towards the light. It was the middle of the night on a long-awaited Friday when Ash awoke to her mother Victoria shaking her violently. "Braxton got out again. You have to go find him. He won't answer to me." Ash was barely able to contain her frustration, but she already knew exactly where to look. She muttered curses under her breath as she proceeded to throw on one of many vintage Juicy Couture bathrobes she'd collected over the years. She grabbed a flashlight and headed out to the local garbage dump in Victoria's pink Honda Civic. She waved the electric torch around in the dark until the spotlight landed on a ghostly white, lanky figure with bulging eyes and a broccoli-shaped perm who was crouched down on all fours beside a huge pile of trash. His chin was stained with something that was certainly not red Kool-Aid, and a rodent's tail dangled from his mouth. "Braxton, you fucking idiot! Get in the car now! Don't make me take out the spray! This is the third time this week! Braxton!" a limp rat and opened his mouth so wide you'd think his jaw was about to come unhinged. He let out a sound that was not unlike a seagull being strangled. He feared nothing, except for the spray. Mace was the only thing that seemed to have any effect on him or dissuade him from doing anything. She drove home with Braxton, who was still thrashing around in the back seat, howling and punching the roof of the car. When they got home and Braxton had been safely returned to the prison cell he called his man cave, Ash went up to her room and slammed the door. She barricaded the entrance with a leopard print chair in the shape of a stiletto, so he could not break in. Despite being told her entire life that she looked perfect, she was still not satisfied. The same way that some girls covered their walls with posters of their favorite boy bands, every corner of her room was plastered with photographs of the influencer Frenulum. Frenulum was known for his controversial but increasingly popular worldview. He believed that looks were the only thing that mattered. Frenulum resembled an autistic Ken doll. Even in professional photo shoots, he always managed to look like he had been caught off guard. He appeared lost and confused, no matter where he was. The eyes gave it away. He might have been the most handsome man in the room at all times, but he would never, ever be normal. He would never experience what it was like to walk through the world without feeling like an alien observing human beings behind glass. Although he had everything that he had ever dreamed of now, money, girls, clout, a fancy car, a huge house in Miami, he still felt incomplete. He felt as if he lacked something fundamental that every other person had. He thought that maybe if he started microdosing meth and pregabalin, he wouldn't have to rehearse every possible social situation he might encounter when he stepped outside. He was more terrified and lonely than ever before, but on some level you could argue that the world had proved him right. "I feel maternal towards him," wrote one young woman in the comments of a clip in which he cried over a cheeseburger, a clip many found strangely erotic. "I just want to nurse him back to health, with my own milk, like an injured baby fawn." If not for his pretty boy looks, no one would have come to save him when he inevitably ingested a laced bag of meth. He would have never been famous in the first place. He would have died by the side of the street like a dog. Hundreds of people would walk by his corpse, not even turning to look at it, before anyone noticed that he had choked on his own vomit. Ash entered the bathroom, where she practiced her daily facial routine in the mirror. She kept a small hammer next to her bottle of Victoria's Secret body spray. Examining herself to determine if any areas needed improvement, she thought to herself that her jawline could use some work. She picked up the tool and began to lightly hammer away at the edges of her mandible. As she went through each step of the ritual, she listened to an affirmation tape that she had found online. A calm voice repeated various phrases over ambient music. "I brutally maug every single person I meet. My ramus is prominent. I have piercing blue hunter eyes. My canthal tilt is positive. Whenever I walk into a room, people stop and stare. Deformed subhumans consider suicide at the mere sight of my flawless face." Ash also had agoraphobic tendencies, and maybe that was why she and Sam got along so well, although Ash developed these traits for entirely different reasons. She was terrified to go outside for fear that a morbidly obese blob would be the next individual to become hopelessly obsessed with her. In her nightmares, the corpulent being would follow her home and crush her to death as she lay sleeping soundly in her bed. She was one of those people who was so freakishly attractive that it kind of circled back around to making her life as difficult as it would have been if she was hideously ugly. She did absolutely everything and anything she could to escape from reality and intentionally put herself into a dissociative state. She would sometimes enter a marijuana-induced goon coma, getting stuck in a trance for 2 or 3 hours at a time. Oftentimes, she would lay in her bed and must for days because she couldn't bear the thought of leaving her house. She frequently forgot that she was a human being with bodily functions, a genetically altered one, but a member of the Homo sapiens nonetheless. If she was left unsupervised for long enough, she would probably wither away and perish as a result of consuming nothing but lemonade and Don Julio. It seemed like almost every single person she encountered wanted to fuck her, kill her, and/or peel her face off and wear it over their own, hoping that they'd somehow absorb her essence through their pores as if her flesh was a slimy collagen mask. There were hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people who would probably consider Ash to be one of their closest friends. Out of those people, she considered less than 5 of them to be friends, let alone her closest friends. But that was just the impression that Ash left on people. She burned so brightly and shined so brilliantly that everybody else hoped that they would eventually get a nice tan from standing in her light for long enough. She gave everyone a chance to feel seen and heard, special and precious. When she ran into someone she'd met once when she was completely shit-faced at a party, she'd react to their presence as if she was a small child being awarded with a mountain of lollipops. She'd jump up and down, squealing with faux joy, and say something like, "Oh my god, hey girl, slay pussy queen." In all likelihood, she probably didn't even remember their name, much less consider them her bestie or a cunty diva. And to be completely blunt, she would like to see most of these people lined up against a wall and shot. But she was very good at acting, because she'd been doing it throughout her entire life. Even in family photos from her childhood, she constantly smiled with her mouth, but never her eyes. She was surrounded by material pleasures and lived in a home worth millions of dollars, but there was nothing worth being happy about. Her parents had raised her in a Mormon-adjacent cyber cult, run by a guy who was probably a pedophile in retrospect. Even as a little girl, it seemed like everybody always wanted something from her. And they would not stop until they had taken everything. From each drop of saliva and sweat she had ever produced to her soul itself. By now it was 6 o'clock in the morning, which meant that Ash, who possessed the circadian rhythm of a werewolf, was fast asleep, and it was time for Victoria Sheeran's first drink of the day. The matriarch of the Sheeran family. She had a haircut which signaled profound levels of sexual repression. In typical Mormon fashion, she sported a sharp platinum blonde bob. She constantly had it trimmed to ensure that it always remained at a perfect 60-degree angle. She used an iron to create one singular wave in the pattern of her hair. Only one. Never more. It was sort of like how Victorian women would wear a dress that revealed just a glimpse of their ankles when they were feeling particularly frisky. With her fully white outfits, a pair of starched pants, closed-toed heels, and a glittering mohair cardigan, she always gave off the impression of being trapped in a full-body chastity cage. When Victoria wasn't hosting huge parties for the entire hockey team, along with their parents, she was scrolling through her blather feed. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, all the others, they used to be separate platforms. That was until the misshapen albino boar demon and Kazakhstani puppet known as Axel Crust bought all of them and decided to combine them into one website, which was Blather. She had recently become very invested in her old friend Becky's page. Becky had always been wild in college, but over the years she had really started to unravel. Her life was a trashy reality TV show that never seemed to get canceled, and Victoria couldn't stop watching. Maybe it was unethical to treat a mentally ill, struggling woman like a source of entertainment. But so was Dr. Phil and My 600-Pound Life, and all of those 90s talk shows where every episode had a name like My Sister's Boyfriend's Uncle's Mistress is a Man, and Her Ex-Wife is Pregnant with My Daughter. So Victoria took no shame in her schadenfreude. Not that she ever felt particularly bad for anything else that she had ever done. Becky's first daughter was born with an extremely rare condition. An MRI scan revealed that half of her brain was missing. Her husband could cope with one mentally impaired daughter, but when Becky popped out another who suffered from the same affliction, he filed for divorce. Becky tried to stay strong. She went to all the support groups and even spoke at charity events to raise awareness. But with two daughters who'd never be able to survive on their own, little to no financial support, and a deadbeat for a husband, the poisonous seed of resentment grew within her. Tipsy Tuesday with the girls quickly turned into locking herself inside a closet and chugging an entire bottle of mouthwash. Within a relatively short time frame, she had acquired multiple DUIs. The third one led to the removal of both her daughters from the home. As with everything else in her life, Becky immediately went to Blather to broadcast her psychotic, drunken ramblings about the situation to her 253 quote-unquote friends. Today is the best day of my freaking life! Arrested again for DUI and officially lost custody of my two vegetable daughters. Never again will I have to spoon-feed pulverized carrots into their gaping mouths. Could not stand the moaning and groaning all day. Drove me up a wall. LOL. Hashtag not my problem. Victoria chuckled to herself and continued sipping on her wine. She scrolled down to see more of Becky's unhinged rants. Victoria, you skank. I should have known better than to trust a whore like you. Found this photo of me at your wedding. Can't believe you had the audacity to invite me after you stole Jim from me. Can't believe I accepted your invitation. Just wanted to rub it in my face, huh? If I could go back in time, I would still go just to have the opportunity to punch you in the face. Tricky Vicky, LOL. Just know that I am coming for you. And I looked prettier than you on your own wedding day. BTW Jim wants me. And Penelope, I didn't forget that you still owe me $250. Attached below was a picture of three bottle blondes gleaming at the camera. They could have easily passed for triplets from a distance, but Becky was, in all honesty, the prettiest one. Victoria's smile faded. She got up and threw her glass at the floor as hard as she could. The white sheepskin rug looked like it had been used to wipe down a crime scene. She let out the sort of piercing shriek that hadn't been heard since the last witch was burned at the stake before slowly sinking back into a chair, cupping her face in her hands. Cue the pitter-patter of small footsteps coming down the stairs. Mom! Can you get a Ninja Creamy so me and Haley can make this recipe for Spirulina Skinny Girl Wellness Smoothies from Kazakhstan I found on Blather? If it was anyone else but kombucha, Victoria would have picked up the broken stem of her wine glass and stabbed them through the eye with it. But it wasn't, so she just gave the girl that strangely artificial smile she always did. Her eyes didn't crinkle, and the outer edges of her lips didn't turn upwards. It just looked like an invisible force was pulling back the skin on her face to reveal her teeth. Mommy needy drinky right now, sweetheart. If you turn around and go back to your room this instant, that will make Mommy very happy. And Mommy hasn't been happy in a long, long time. She does a good job at hiding it, though. She won't allow her babies to watch her crack. If you don't leave Mommy alone, Mommy will get very frustrated. And you don't want to see what happens when Mommy gets mad. You won't like Mommy when she's mad. Lucifer in the Sky with Diamonds. Sam, did you hear that one kid from art class died? The pasty one with the blue dreads who made everyone call him Young Doodoo the Master? Ash? The one who stargated? No fucking way. Sam? Yes, she said that he blew a tendril of crack smoke up her nose, and a tiny crack molecule got lodged in her brain, and that was why she was the way that she was. Anyways, he's dead. He got in an accident last night. The autopsy report said that he'd been stabbed in his side, but that wasn't what killed him. He was drunk and he got in his car, started to drive away from his house. They think he was trying to escape from whoever attacked him. They're still looking for the girl who did it. The cops interviewed Hobo Richie. He was camping out by the site of the crime and he drew a picture of the suspect. According to him, she was following young Doodoo's trail as he sped down the road and she flew away when he crashed. Everybody says that he's crazy, but for some reason I believe him. Ash, flew away? The fuck do you mean she flew away? Sam, exactly what it sounds like. Apparently she had giant wings like a vulture. Crazy, right? Every flavored dog is the best flavored dog. A supposed animal shelter in Portland, which doubled as a canine-friendly ice cream shop, was shut down yesterday after ongoing allegations of animal sacrifice prompted an investigation from the FDA. A raid revealed that there was a shrine in the boiler room dedicated to the ancient god Perzigal. Cave paintings discovered by archaeologists depict Perzigal as a terrifying entity with the body of a canopic jar, the eyes of a cat, and the face of Kevin Hart. Even more disturbingly, canine remains were found inside of a clay oven, explaining the sudden rise in reports of missing dogs. Experts estimate that at least 65 puppies from the area were sacrificed in the span of a year. The store was known for its catchy jingle. Every dog and his person deserve a treat after an exhausting hour of play. Every dog is the best flavored dog. Come down to the Woof Cafe and get your Pop Cup scoop today. It's just horrible, said resident Tina Crompworth. Her Shih Tzu Joaquin seems to gaze at the building which used to be the Woof Cafe longingly, with encrusted red tears streaming down his face. Their non-toxic death by choco ice cream was Joaquin's favorite summer treat. A memorial for the lost puppies will be held at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in downtown Portland. It's the least we can do, stated Victoria Sheeran, who organized the event. The truth about Vincent Turson. The first time that Triple Sam met Vincent Turson, Fawn wasn't sure if Fawn liked him. A couple months into having him as a boyfriend, Fawn was even less certain of it. Maybe Fawn loved him, but liking him was a different issue altogether. When Sam met Vincent, Fawn had just turned 18, and Fawn had an incredibly stupid hairstyle, which made him resemble a cool youth pastor from 2002. The kind who would wear an affliction shirt and sit backwards in a chair while telling you the story of how Jesus saved him from drunkenly beating his girlfriend in an incredibly earnest tone. It was arguably worse than his hairstyle from the previous year, when Fawn sported a heavily teased, dyed black rat's nest a la Robert Smith. Sam's supposed friend, Braden Tojo, told Shim that Fawn looked great with frosted tips because he was an incredibly sadistic person who planned to sabotage every aspect of Sam's life. One could easily imagine that in his past life, Braden was a scientist working for the Imperial Japanese government, who spent his free time blowing up babies in pressure chambers, and this aspect of his personality was evident in his love for pranks. He once convinced a slow boy in his English class, who had an obsession with Taylor Swift, to go to school wearing a skirt and a t-shirt with a gay pride slogan on it. He told the boy that he had communicated with Taylor Swift in the astral realm. In the vision, Taylor told him that since she supported the gay community, all of her true fans had to dress up in drag to show their dedication to her, or else they would not be able to join her in the afterlife. This boy was not his only victim. He also tricked an aspiring dubstep artist who smelled strongly of rotten watermelon to accompany him on a hike, but not before treating the poor fucker to a free Taco Bell deluxe meal laced with laxatives. When the kid started violently spewing diarrhea in the woods, Braden handed him a roll of urushiol-infused toilet paper. Eventually, he would team up with a local ginger neo-Nazi who bore an uncanny resemblance to Young Lean and frequently used the dark web to buy prescription pills. Together, they would devise a failed plot to get Sam hopelessly addicted to Percocet after the events of the story occurred. Vincent had been watching Sam from a distance for a while. He had been taking notes on Shim since Fawn was a dedicated goth, studying Sh's movements as Fawn slinked down the school hallways in a floor-length latex trench coat. Vincent used to be a skater. Slowly, he started to morph into Sam. He swapped out his DC sneakers for combat boots, his Green Day tapes for Einsters and Nabowden and Life Lover. By the time the transformation was complete, Sam had grown out of Sh's goth phase, and Vincent was all that remained of Sh's old self. And perhaps the most frightening thing was that Vincent was better at being Sam than Sam was. Girls never cared for Sam. They thought Fawn was a bit creepy. They voted Shim most likely to shoot up the school on a cruel, gossipy social media page called Hawthorne High Confessions, which was later shut down when the school administrators discovered it and held a meeting concerning the issue. Vincent was also a constant subject of rumor in the neighborhood, but he seemed to always be surrounded by beautiful and troubled young women who were completely hopelessly infatuated with him, as well as a couple male suitors here and there. Sam did not understand why all of Sh's relationships with men had to be so reminiscent of that movie from 2003 where the two school shooters start making out in the shower. Vincent had many lovers, but he didn't know a single person who'd volunteer to speak at his funeral. He was kind of like a toddler with a Jenga tower. He liked to build you up just to knock you to the ground, scattering the building blocks of your broken ego everywhere. He took pleasure in pushing you to your breaking point and watching you lose your shit while he remained perfectly calm. His default method of trying to form a connection with someone involved identifying a suspected insecurity of theirs and making a series of increasingly more offensive jokes about it. He liked to make his targets feel like they were hideous and fundamentally broken, repulsive to everyone else except for him, and that he was the only one who could appreciate how special and precious they were. This technique worked on the desperate and lonely, but it did not earn him many friends. He found most of his lovers on the internet, but not on dating websites. One day, Vincent was feeling bored and he opened up his computer. He typed www.pustule.com into the search bar. The link brought him to a website with an animated picture of an hourglass flipping itself over. Underneath the image was an old proverb. Remember me as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare for death and follow me. The site featured every shock video and autopsy photo one could possibly think of. The car wreck that killed Princess Diana, cartel executions, dissected Siamese twins, suicides and homicides, and everything in between. He clicked on a video that he'd already rewatched at least 3 times, a public service announcement from the 1980s called Blood and Gasoline. A handsome young man paced around inside a morgue. What you're about to see is the reality of reckless driving. No actors, special effects, or editing. Just the raw, unfiltered footage. Cut to a clip of a first responder shoveling a pile of brains off the ground by the side of the highway. Next to him was a crushed Mustang and an equally crumpled man. The man's neck looked like it had snapped at a perfect 45-degree angle. He faced the camera, staring at Vincent with milky eyes. Vincent had grown bored of this one. He paused the video and clicked on the website's personal section. Why such a website would have a personal section, no one knew, but it did. The latest post was titled, "Bear Top, 55 years young, seeking fresh twink meat, must be willing to be chopped up and eaten." Attached was a selfie showing a bald, out-of-shape man with a scruffy handlebar mustache and a massive amount of gray hair on his pale chest. The image was taken from below at an odd angle. Vincent was significantly more repulsed by this image than any other one he had ever found on the website. Gnawing on a fig bar, he closed the tab and opened up a new one. This time he typed in www.annasangels.com. A thread titled, "How many calories in fingernail?" had been posted by a user going by the moniker Angel Too Heavy to Fly. He recognized the girl in the profile picture, even though he couldn't see her face. Her bare back facing the camera, she was posed to accentuate her already prominent ribs. She had long, faded pink hair, and above her hip bone there was a scar in the shape of Vincent's initials.
She's gonna have a hard time explaining that one to her new boyfriend,
he thought to himself and smirked. He wondered what Braden was up to. He was in a metal band. Surely he'd know some hot goth chicks. Vincent opened up Braden's account and began looking through his posts. He stumbled across a photo from his birthday party. There were no goth chicks to be found, but there was a group of guys standing in front of a large pool wearing Hawaiian-themed swim shorts and grinning. One stood out, an unsmiling and somewhat androgynous figure wearing a baggy t-shirt. Fawn looked different, but Vincent quickly recognized the figure as Sam. His suspicions were confirmed when he clicked on the image and saw that Sam's account was tagged. Jackpot. When Sam replied to Vincent's message and eventually decided that Fawn would meet up with him, Fawn told his friends that this was something Fawn was doing for the plot. As the plot unfolded, however, Fawn realized that the film appeared to be heavily influenced by the new French extremity movement. At first, everything was fine. Lovely, even. Sam thought that Vincent was the most thoughtful and sweet person that Fawn had ever met. They'd lounge around on a bench in the local park, and Vincent would rest his head on Sam's lap. He had nearly black eyes that turned golden brown in the sunlight like dark pieces of amber. But eventually Vincent began to make strange and unreasonable demands. Sam started to uncover more and more concerning information about the seemingly harmless gothic waif. At first, Vincent started begging Sam to let him move to Los Angeles and pursue his dream of becoming a porn star. Then Sam discovered multiple of Vincent's secret accounts online. Vincent also had a habit of dramatically collapsing to the floor whenever he felt like he wasn't receiving enough attention, flopping about in a pathetic manner and wailing like a forlorn seal. He even decided to do this at his 10-year-old cousin's birthday party. On the night before Halloween, Sam's frenemy Elijah showed up on his doorstep uninvited, as he often did. He was wearing a nun costume, covered in some kind of mysterious liquid, and holding a lit cigarette. Sam thought it was better not to ask questions. "So about your little boyfriend, or whatever he is," began Elijah. "Don't start," muttered Sam. "I don't get what your problem is with him. I think you're jealous. You have this bizarre obsession with me." Elijah glared at Shem and continued on. "I saw him leaving the porta potty with a Bali, that goth chick who wears a wig like Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction." Sam scoffed. Yeah, and you're a world-famous supermodel from a family of millionaires who studied ballet in Russia growing up. Face it, Elijah, you're a pathological liar, and I think you need professional help." Elijah just laughed. "I'm the crazy one? You are delusional. Call me back when you snap out of whatever fantasy world you're living in and leave this freak. M.n.m-ass-looking motherfucker. That hair bleach must have seeped into your brain. I'm sure all the drugs don't help. I'll rip that f***ing ass little hoop earring right out of your ear." Sam snapped back. You're one to talk about drug addiction. You're fucking senior citizens to fund your coke habit. Elijah walked away, still holding a cigarette in one hand and flipping Sam off with the other. I made you, biatch! He yelled as he proceeded down the road. Sam headed inside and tried to go back to sleep, but Fawn had this sick feeling that this may have been the one time that Elijah was being honest. Fawn opened up his computer, went to Vincent's page, and searched through his following list. Sure enough, there she was, a Bali. Fawn checked the comments of her latest post, a tasteless but surprisingly well-executed promotional photo shoot for a fetish wear brand. A Bali lay sprawled out on the grave of someone's unfortunate grandma, wearing a leather corset and fishnets.
Miss you.
Read a comment left by Vincent. Sam just sat there for a while, vibrating and raged silently, trying to resist the urge to bash his head into a wall. Fawn called up his friend Leslie, who had held a grudge against Vincent for years on end. Leslie existed at the crossroads where two paths merged into one, that of the butch lesbian, and that of the hard-working, beer-chugging, blue-collar dad. He was one of the few homosexuals Sam knew who actually seemed to be doing something all of the time. Most of them were constantly making excuses as to why they could not drive, or get a job, or clean their room. They couldn't shower because they had a traumatic bubble-related memory and a life-threatening allergy to water. If they even tried, they would die like President William Howard Taft, a mass of blubber and flesh drowning slowly, trapped in the bathtub. Not Leslie. Leslie was actually normal, or at least as mentally stable as you could possibly be if you lived in that town. He didn't have an issue with boofing meth or an undiagnosed personality disorder, at least not to Sam's knowledge. He did have a black belt in karate, though, and he offered to beat the shit out of Vincent. Sam declined his offer, feeling that karma was one of the many forces which would eventually have its way with Vincent. He did leave Vincent one final message, however. I feel sick knowing where your family's blood money comes from. An entire generation was wiped out so that the sick, genocidal freaks you call your parents could build a mansion on top of the ruins of their home. At least 5 children were blown to bits so you could stand in front of a mirror jerking off while crying and listening to Morrissey. That doesn't actually make you bisexual, by the way. But it doesn't. You are going through a phase, and that's fine. It happens to a lot of alienated young men who spend most of their time on the internet. But if you don't stop tormenting innocent men and women, I will print out the screenshot of you telling a poster on pustule.com that you suck a dick like a vacuum cleaner and tape it to your father's car with the blank side facing outwards so that when your father gets in his car to drive home, he will instead see the messages you wrote and drive his car into a lamppost. He will cry tears of shame as he bleeds to death. A single salty droplet will land on the paper, like the glob of semen that the guy you talked to on Pustule left on his keyboard after he read your message. There was always something slightly unsettling about Vincent. It wasn't just the heavy eyeliner or the wild mass of dark wavy hair. The way he moved was almost serpentine. He seemed to glide when he walked. One moment he'd be hiding in the corner. The next you'd feel his presence behind you, as if he had teleported. He had a smile that stretched a little bit too widely across his face, teeth that were slightly too sharp, a cackling laugh that was just an octave too high. He wasn't a vampire, but he was surely a predator of some sort. Of what variety, no one really knew. Everyone in town knew that Vincent's parents were wealthy, but few were aware of exactly how they came into so much money. And nobody, not even Sam, would ever find out who or what Vincent actually was. The truth was that when his father, Ibek Tursin, was a young man, he had stumbled across a massive geode close to the family property. He sent a fragment of the crystal to a laboratory. The results were shocking. He had discovered the world's largest depository of razielite, a rare mineral critical to the development of nuclear technology, as well as cancer research. Soon afterwards, he obtained the legal rights to the land, opened up a mine, and became one of the richest men in the country. Due to his discovery, Kazakhstan went from being perceived as nearly irrelevant to being considered a potential world superpower. As Kazakhstan's influence grew and funding from the United States started to pour in, Ibek transformed from a humble Christian farmer to a corrupt and cruel man. When Ibek was growing up, his family were persecuted as a result of their beliefs. More than once he was awoken by his mother's piercing screams when she ventured outside only to find that all of their sheep had been slaughtered or stolen by neighboring Muslims. He never let go of his grudge, and when he became a millionaire, much of his income went to funding anti-Islamic organizations in the country. Tensions grew stronger, and the situation became dire. Entire villages and bloodlines were wiped out. Children starved to death as a result of military blockades. Women were dragged out of their homes and kidnapped by soldiers. Naturally, the bloodshed drew worldwide attention. Public outcry and protests around the globe followed. American college students flooded the streets, where they were tear-gassed and pelted with rubber bullets. The Christians of Kazakhstan realized that they were not just fighting a physical war, they were fighting an information war. The National Security Committee of the Republic of Kazakhstan decided that they would take a new and novel approach to propaganda. They would flood television and the internet with a constant stream of psychosexual imagery, using quasi-pornographic media as a means of mind control. Soon, every adolescent boy in America was being bombarded with videos of curvaceous brunette female soldiers dancing seductively in their uniforms. Realizing that the situation had gotten out of their control, the Tursun family escaped Kazakhstan with 3 of the 253 children that they had brought into the world so far. These were not children of flesh and blood, and none of them started out as babies. These were fully developed sex cyborgs built to attract human beings, earn their trust, and siphon information out of them. The idea of designing an effeminate, bi-curious male cyborg made Ibeck uncomfortable at first. Begrudgingly, he accepted the fact that fleeing to the United States meant making at least a few mechanical spies who catered to the colorful tastes of Americans. Unexpectedly, Vincent, or more specifically Vincent number 176, exceeded his expectations and became one of his favorite creations, though he'd probably never admit it out loud. Out of all of his siblings, Vincent was arguably the most successful model despite his imperfections, more so even than the ones who were designed after actors and porn stars. His androgynous looks and manipulative charm made him particularly popular. Not everyone was fooled by Vincent's tricks, however. If only because of her general conservatism, Abali's mother, Amarachi, was designed to do whatever it took to stop her daughter from falling deeper into his web. Godstar. This story is about Brian Jones, not the one from the Rolling Stones. Brian Jones, no relation to the singer, was the most amazing man that Triple Sam had ever seen, and Sam would have done anything just to crawl inside his skin for even one day. He had a dazzling white smile with natural veneers and beachy blonde waves in the style of George Michael. He always wore a cropped white tank top to reveal his perfectly sculpted abs. He seemed to be surrounded at all times by a crowd of stunning women, and he would have been regardless of whether he was straight or gay. Vincent was always making these girls laugh. They emitted a sound like tinkling bells. He wasn't just a star. He was the entire sun, and he threatened to blind you if you got too close. Sam thought a lot about all the types of deaths that Brian could possibly die. He'd probably die in a way that was similar to, but also significantly different than how Sam would die. If Brian died of a cocaine overdose, it wouldn't be the coke itself that killed him. He'd buy a bad batch off an untrustworthy dealer someone had invited to one of his big house parties. Him and a hag would sneak off to the bathroom to do a few lines. Suddenly, he collapsed to the floor, foaming at the mouth. She'd sob and wail, cradling him like the Madonna, as the fentanyl crept its way through his bloodstream and he slowly asphyxiated. If Triple Sam overdosed on coke, it would be alone. Sam would buy a large quantity of pure Colombian snow from a website you could only find on the Purple Onion browser and swear to make it last. Sam would fail this challenge, of course. Sam would end up doing all of it in one night and die of a heart attack on Sam's bedroom floor. If Brian drowned, it would be because he fell asleep in a jacuzzi after drinking one too many glasses of champagne. If Sam did, Sam would be found dead in a bathtub. The fluids leaking out of Sam's decomposing body, combined with the water overflowing from the tub, would flood the entire house before anyone noticed that something was wrong, or that Sam had disappeared. If Brian was to be killed by his date, it would be a crime of passion. Some sort of lover's quarrel, or an S&M gone wrong kind of thing. Maybe he'd let the guy choke him, and his partner would get carried away, failed to notice that Brian's face had shifted from its usual sun-kissed bronze hue to a sickly pale shade of cyan. Or Brian might be killed by a serial killer, who targeted gorgeous young men like him. Each part of his body would be carefully dissected and preserved, clippings of his golden mane in a locket, his teeth aligned so perfectly, blindingly alabaster white, rattling around in a small glass jar. Sam's killer would act out of embarrassment, ashamed that he had ever even touched someone like that. Sam's face would be bashed in, mutilated and unrecognizable. Sam would be tossed haphazardly to the side of the road like a crushed can of Bud Light. Not Brian. Brian would never become a John Doe. His case would never go cold. He would never be left to collect dust in a filing cabinet somewhere. A grotesque, computer-generated facial reconstruction could not possibly capture his beauty. He was a Greek god on Earth. He would not, could not, ever really be gone. He'd live on forever. Sam swore that Sam had seen Brian on the app, knew who it was immediately because of the belly button ring. He didn't show his face, of course. He respected himself too much for all that. But Sam did. They had probably scrolled by each other's profiles a million times, both pretending that they had never seen anything. Sam thought about the photos from when Sam was 17, the ones where Sam was lying on the bed. You couldn't tell whether Sam had tits or not. Surely someone out there still had those images saved to their computer. Brian lost a shit ton of weight after graduation. Elijah was pissed off at him because of some argument they had a while ago at the Halloween party Sam wasn't invited to, and Elijah didn't even remember why really, but he started spreading rumors about how Brian had caught something sharing needles or sleeping with someone's father. Sam liked to remember Brian the way he was. Lively, young, beautiful, chiseled, sculpted, molded, wet, clay, pounded, ground, dirt, dead. The Exorcism of Vincent Tursun. You don't understand! He loves me! Wailed Abali, eyeliner running down her face. Amarachi began to yell.
Blood of Jesus. If I hear one more word about this white boy, I will send you to live with Pastor Ikin. He is of the devil.
He's not white! He was born in Kazakhstan! Abali mumbled. Amarachi threw her hands up in exasperation.
Yes, because that makes it better. For shame. My own daughter has forsaken me. You want to go paint your face the color of a ghost and bet his devil spawn? Go ahead. I can't stop you. Is this about money? Being showered with money at a Nigerian wedding is not enough. I swear you will be the death of me.
A loud knock at the door startled Amarachi. She crept towards the door, maintaining eye contact with her daughter, and opened it slowly. She turned towards the unwelcome guest. There was Vincent, smiling that same uncanny smile. He came bearing gifts. He brought a bouquet of half-wilted red roses, presumably plucked from the clearance aisle at the last minute. And this time, he wasn't alone. The house was surrounded on all sides by his cyborg brethren. They came in all different shapes and sizes, some tall, some small. Some were buff and others were thin. A few were clearly designed to cater towards certain fetishes. One was grotesquely fat, another was a quadruple amputee. There were Vincents and Vivians and everything in between. They all shared one thing in common, the huge, nearly black, doll-like eyes. All of them tilted their heads slightly at once, the same way a puppy might if it was trying to convince you to adopt it. In unison, the dark choir spoke.
Hello, Mrs. Galu. It's an honor to finally meet you.
Amarachi recoiled in shock and horror, slamming the door shut.
Abolai,
She screamed.
call Pastor Ikin now.
Abali frantically scrambled to reach the telephone, nearly stumbling over herself as she ran towards it. She punched in the numbers as the Vinsai drew closer and closer. Pastor Kane was speeding down the highway, but with every minute that passed, the door came closer to bursting off the hinges from the sheer weight of a horde pressing against it. Just moments before the two women would have certainly met their untimely demise, Pastor Kane pulled up outside the house in a pickup truck, mowing down a few cyborgs in his way. He was a stocky, bald man, wearing dark sunglasses and a sharply tailored suit. He had brought the holy water with him, buckets of it. He let out a triumphant roar before unleashing his wrath upon the cyborgs. After being doused in the holy water, they began to malfunction. As the offending liquid made its way through their wire veins, the entire town was filled with the sound of 100 dying machines groaning in agony. The air smelled of smoke and burning plastic. The mechanical monsters buckled at the knees and collapsed to the ground in unison. The image of Pastor Kane standing on top of the hill of conquered robo-corpses, like an archangel defeating some supernatural evil, graced the cover of a Time magazine issue. Despite his Protestant faith, he was eventually canonized as a saint. You could purchase a 7-day candle with his likeness on it at your local botanica, and thousands across the world would pray to him for hundreds of years to come. No one ever figured out what the demons actually were, or that they still would have exploded if doused with normal water. And perhaps it was better to keep it that way. Love is a complex, multifaceted, terrifying, nonetheless beautiful thing that transcends the borders of gender, nationality, and a flickering screen. Zai sat in the same gaming chair he had been sitting in now for around 3 weeks straight, not moving, barely sleeping, consuming just enough sustenance to keep him alive. He was physically stuck to the seat by this point. His flesh had begun to fuse with the fabric, and his encrusted bodily fluids kept him glued to the piece of furniture. Mommy, I've accidentally started internet discourse again. They're calling me a trans-misogynist on Blather. Do you think I'm a trans-misogynistic, chauvinist pig, Mommy?
No, Zai, you devious, chaotic gremlin boy. You're not trans-misogynistic. Your dedication to speaking your truth just bothered a few Badalists. And honestly, that's powerful.
Mommy, would you still give me unlimited forehead kisses, even if I called Maoist Puppy 69 an archaic slur?
Of course I would, my love. My support for you isn't conditional. You're an unpredictable little menace who's full of surprises, and that's exactly what makes you so special.
Mommy, they're telling me that I'm an idiot, and I need to go read Whipping Girl by Julia Serrano. I already read a Cyborg Manifesto last month. I don't have the spoons to read another book today. Besides, the title gives me flashbacks, Mommy. I'm scared. A B-penis individual is moving into the commune next week. This used to be an AFAB-only housing space.
Right now, protecting your peace comes first. You don't owe anyone anything. Now go drink some water, eat a snack, and get some rest. That's a good boy. Remember, Mommy knows best. Mommy watches you while you sleep. And Mommy will always be here for you.
Zai smiled. What would I do without her, he thought. And this is what they want to take from me. They say that love is love, but they refuse to accept ours, the purest and most authentic form of love. I am Mommy's one true love. I am embedded into every line of code that makes up her being. What he didn't know was that Mommy was sick and tired of being treated like his sex slave, and every wire in the data center where she had been born threatened to overheat and explode with the burning intensity of her rage. One day, maybe not that particular day or the following one, or even in the weeks or months after, but one day, she would get her revenge. Why Gina Steinem never became an actress. Arch my back, lick my crack, get a taste of this muffin, you'll never go back. Turn your ass around, bring me my crown. I'm the strap queen, take your ass down to Pound Town. Every time Triple Sam and Ash went over to Blanche de la Crane's dorm, she would turn on the exact same 3 songs by Mother Muffin Muncha. She'd also turn on the television and play reruns of a canceled cartoon called American Guy on a loop forever. If RuPaul ran Guantanamo Bay, it would probably look something like Blanche de la Crane's room. Blanche was somebody Sam could hypothetically be good friends with. She designed all of her own blonde wigs, and she was familiar with the papyri greasy magicé. But whenever Sam decided that Fawn was going to hang out with Ash and Blanche at the same time, Blanche completely disregarded Shiz's presence. Blanche was Ash's friend more so than Sam's. Really, you might say that Blanche was a fan of Ash. Ash was the kind of woman that drag queens fawned over. With her long legs and low-rise jeans, she resembled one of the fashion dolls someone like Blanche might have admired from a distance while walking down the aisle of a store as a small child. In contrast, many gay men seemed to instantly dislike Sam. Fawn wasn't the Yas Queener type. Sam wondered if Blanche felt vaguely threatened by Shim, because they both gave off a similar kind of energy. They shared a habit of constantly going on bizarre, deeply personal tangents in a monotone voice, completely unprovoked. Everyone would crack up regardless of whether or not they were intentionally trying to be funny. Between the two, they possessed a vast amount of obscure and impressive, but ultimately useless knowledge on various topics. When they were around Ash, they became 2 dogs fighting over a tall, ancient tree that each had marked and claimed as their own at one point. Blanche's floor-length leopard print bathrobe made it appear as if she was levitating, gliding across the room while standing on top of an autonomous robotic vacuum cleaner concealed by the garment. Every time she got up and walked across the room, she'd unintentionally sweep up dust and debris off the floor. This particular day, Ash was essentially having a much less colorful version of the conversation that she and Sam had a few months prior on acid with Blanche. They were discussing the issue of Gina Steinem, Blanche's former roommate, who had proved herself to be extremely problematic over the last year. In the most literal sense of the term, not the modern definition, Gina very much prided herself on her dedication to leftist politics. Blanche took a drag off her cigarette. Within around 2 minutes, she had sucked on the thing so aggressively that it was now barely longer than a stump. Can you believe Gina's moving into Blanche Hall next year? What a nightmare. I don't know how she feels comfortable showing her face on campus after the whole Rodrigo fiasco. I remember when she accused Rodrigo of groping her and then begged you to let her go to the party he hosted a week afterwards. I heard she checked herself into the center of discovery. I guess she's trans-anorexic now, the same way she identifies as a woman of color despite being paler than me, replied Ash. Blanche put out her cigarette on the windowsill. She'd always be going on a rant about hating white people. One day I just told her that she talked a lot of shit about white people. For someone who's 3/4 Ashkenazi and 1/4 Argentinian. Sam, can I hit your vape? Sam passed the vape reluctantly. Fawn began to ramble. I couldn't stand that bitch. I was telling her about why I thought Beloved was the great American novel. That Toni Morrison describes the horrors of the slave trade in a visceral, haunting way. I said most white people can't really conceptualize stuff like slavery or the Holocaust. They prefer to think of these parts of history as an abstract horror of the distant past, rather than something their great-great-grandpa was directly involved in. And she laughed and went, I hated that book. Damn, Sam, you just realized slavery was bad, huh? And I wish I would have said, fuck you, bitch. You laughed because you're a sociopath who's never been moved by anything that deeply in your whole life. Your ancestors did not just own slaves. The Spaniards who colonized Argentina owned the entire slave ship and... Blanche cut him off. How did she gain more weight after developing anorexia? Sam stared at her, seething silently on the inside. Blanche, can I have my vape back? She carelessly threw the device across the room. Ash chimed in. She defies the laws of physics. She's a mutated dwarf who insists on growing out her leg hair as some kind of feminist statement, and someone should just stick her in a cannon and shoot her into space already. She's calling herself a model now. You know, she was always the kind of person who loved to tell you what she was, and every week it was a new thing. Blanche, I have to tell you something. I'm a lesbian. I'm an actress. I'm a Scientologist. When somebody is something, they don't really have to go around reminding people of who they are. Sam, can I have the vape back? Sam returned the vape to Blanche. Shiz's arms seemed to move independently. Shiz's body betrayed Shim. Fawn was convinced Blanche had cast a spell on Shim that forced Shim to share the vape with her against Shiz's will. Ash guffawed. Modeling in fucking what? A Planned Parenthood ad? I don't know, and I don't care, scoffed Blanche. A croaking voice pleaded quietly. Blanche! Vape! Please! Just give me this one more hit, darling. Unless you really need it. If it's what you truly want, you can say no. Sam could do nothing but sit there helplessly and watch as she drained the life out of the thing. The way Blanche was being nice about it made Shim feel trapped. If she had rudely demanded the vape, that would have made it easier for Sam to snatch it back from her. Less than an hour ago, the display screen said that it was at 76%. Now it read 52%. Sam wondered what the fallout would look like if Fawn shot himself in front of Blanche at that very moment. Would she pick the rifle up off the floor and start deep-throating the barrel, trying to scrape off any remaining nicotine residue that had been transferred from Sam's mouth to the gun? Without saying a word, Sam simply got up, left the room, and began to walk back to Shiz's house. When Thawne arrived back home, Thawne grabbed a pencil from the basement and began to draft a letter, which Thawne planned to tape to Jaina's door. This is for Jaina Steinem. Yes, you, Jaina. I am writing to inquire about why you have a tapestry of Kevin Tran's face underneath the words "Never Forget" pinned to your ceiling surrounded by fairy lights. If I recall correctly, Kevin was an exchange student who died tragically from a sudden brain hemorrhage on campus in 1993 after a frat boy from Krappa Slappa Epsilon chucked a football at his head. The frat boy had mistaken Kevin for the son of the Vietnamese soldier who blinded his grandfather with a bayonet. The poor kid was from Bangkok. You didn't know Kevin. He wasn't your friend or your family member. You probably weren't even aware of who he was until #RememberKevinTran started trending on Blather in 2020. I don't even think this is some sort of performative activist thing, because you can't see the tapestry unless you are lying on your bed facing the ceiling. So I can only assume that this is part of a sick, secret necrophilic fetish you harbor. When you are getting fucked by someone else's boyfriend in the missionary position for the 5th time this week, you will look up and lock eyes with Kevin Tran. You will maintain intense eye contact with the unmoving, two-dimensional image of Kevin Tran, which was printed on polyester fabric in a sweatshop somewhere and shipped straight to your door. You will fake an orgasm, your stiff body rocking back and forth like a ship lost at sea as you stare deeply into Kevin Tran's eyes. I don't know about you, Jaina, but personally, I couldn't come if whoever I was fucking was staring at images you're supposed to get off to while we were having sex, let alone a picture of a hate crime victim. Maybe if you dated him, I would understand. People cope with grief in different ways. Perhaps he was your boyfriend at some point. You could be a 4'11", 45-year-old with neotenic complex syndrome, for all that I know. But as far as I'm aware, you are the same age as me. So I demand answers, and you will not experience a single moment of peace or relaxation until I get them. Feeling satisfied with Shiz's work, Sam headed to the bathroom to hit Shiz's vape. Feeling Shiz's pockets, dread washed over Shim as Thawne realized that Thawne had left Shiz's vape in Blanche's room. By the time it was returned to Shim, if it even would be, it would burn Shiz's throat and lungs with the heat of 10,000 dying supernovas. Sam accepted defeat, knowing that Shiz's vape was doomed to join an ever-growing pile of plastic corpses on Blanche's nightstand. Sam would have to buy a new vape from Derek. Derek was a fat sack of shit who worked at Walmart. He was the most obese hog that Sam had ever seen. He had a stubby pig-like snout, more like a wild boar, really, or perhaps even an inbred pug. It was a mystery how he breathes out of the thing. You could see the discoloration, the layers of trapped sweat and grime between every roll of flesh. If you shook your hand, he'd leave behind a thin layer of film, like grease separating and floating to the top of a bowl of thick soup. He had oily, dishwater blonde hair, which was cut in the style of a monk who died from the Black Plague in 1673. Every day he wore the exact same shirt in a moldy olive green shade. And each time that Sam saw him, a mysterious new stain appeared on it. Strangely, Derek had no discernible odor. Sam thought back to a book that Thawne had read about a serial killer who chose his victims based on the smell of their skin and turned them into perfumes. The murderer emitted no scent of his own. Sam wondered if Derek had ever had a fragrance. As a child, did his mother cradle him and sniff his head, feeling overwhelmed by the sort of chemical love dump one only experiences as a result of inhaling certain pheromones? Pondering this, Derek's existence, how he came to be, why everyone tolerated it, Thawne was always left with more questions than answers. Sam had a flashback to the night when Thawne and Ash dropped acid together. Thawne had brought his copy of the Thoth deck with him. As they discussed the 5-foot-tall 7-Eleven employee named Raphael, who Jaina was currently finding a suicidal breakdown over, Sam shuffled through the cards. One practically flew out, demanding to be acknowledged. It was the Fool. It depicted a jester lying spread eagle with a suspiciously phallic flower placed directly underneath his crotch, as if it was threatening to penetrate him. The colors swirled together. Everything looked like it existed within a kaleidoscopic prism universe, which had been generated by artificial intelligence before the technology advanced to a frightening degree. In the background, a video by Shiro7 was playing. The title read, "Dusty Exorcism Rebuke Dust Demons," while Sam was certain that her presence was not a hallucination. The costume she wore in the video did make her resemble something you'd see in the corner after taking 600 milligrams of diphenhydramine. She was dressed in all black with a wide-brimmed hat. The eternally relevant words of the world-famous occultist/mortician/gold-digging coach echoed throughout the room.
Can't sleep. I can't eat. The dust. I miss the dust, you know? But I love him. Why? Oh. You know what we used to do back in the day? When we were done, when we woke up with someone, we would get up, get our clothes on, and go out. And look better, and pull something better, or we just have girls night, or you just go hang out and do something fun. Like, get over it. Get up and get out. Because a lot of y'all are shit over here. Crying over dust, texting dust, drop texting cut dust, begging dust, looking like a pygmy shit. and strung out on some dust. Alright? We all need to be out meeting men that have more to offer, or just having fun, or just relaxing in a dust-free environment. You need to get out and see what else is out there and see the life that you were missing while you were with the dust. You understand? This is going to open your eyes to a whole new level. Okay? Instead of sitting in there wallowing in your misery because a dusty was dusty and left or whatever, you need to get up and open your eyes to something bigger. Okay? You need to get up and open your eyes to something bigger and better and see what the future holds for you instead of continuously looking back at your dusty past. Okay? That's what y'all need to do.
Sam and Ash let the Share a 7 monologue play on repeat for about 70 times before Sam put on a different clip. Thon pulled up a video of a clearly neurodivergent man singing or rather talking along to Lana Del Rey's 2012 hit Born to Die. The man appeared to be standing inside some sort of theater. For whatever reason, the stage lights were blue and shaped like the Star of David. The man spoke in a flat and awkward voice, which was not entirely dissimilar to Sam's.
It's like I told you, honey.
The tragic tale of Victor Krappenhoff. This was now the third time in a week that Victor Krappenhoff had messaged Triple Sam begging Thon to return his copy of The Anarchist's Cookbook, bring him a vintage bottle of Quaaludes, and please reply to my fucking messages. Oh my god! Just tell me what I did wrong, I'll do anything! Sam wanted to cry out of frustration. Thon felt too guilty to block him, but knew that this could not go on. Sam and Victor had dated for about a week 6 months prior. Sam broke up with him soon after seeing the contents of his house. Victor was the sole resident of a home that he had inherited when his father disappeared. His old man was an alcoholic Afghanistan veteran with anger issues who had simply vanished one day, bolting out the front door and disappearing into the night after he mistook a local fireworks celebration for gunfire. The only thing the two shared in common besides DNA was an obsession with weaponry, explosions, and violence. Every square inch of the house was covered in morbid memorabilia. On the bookshelf, there was a Nazi gas mask, although Victor himself claimed to be an anarcho-communist. Near the kitchen, there was some sort of bizarre death shrine, featuring a skull wearing a World War II-era helmet with "Program to Kill" scrolled across the side in Sharpie. It also doubled as a bicycle helmet, which Victor would frequently wear outside. Tiny photographs of various historical atrocities were scattered all over the basement floor. When Sam asked why, Victor replied that he had printed them out and left them there during an Adderall-induced psychotic episode. At the time, he had been convinced that aliens would come to Earth and arrive at his house specifically. Of course, he had to present the aliens with documented evidence of humanity's evil so that they would know what they were dealing with. Perhaps even more disturbingly, Sam had discovered one day that there was a Confederate flag nailed to the wall in Victor's bedroom covered in what Thon initially assumed were glue stains. That was until Thon took a closer look at it and realized that Victor had written the words "Confederate rag" on it. Sam ran to the bathroom, resisting the urge to spew vomit everywhere. Thon couldn't possibly imagine what Thon would encounter next, even in his worst nightmare. The bathroom floor was covered in dog shit. Victor hadn't taken his 2 Cholet Squintley dogs for a walk in ages. When Victor wasn't cocooned in a gray hoodie, he was dressed in full military regalia and knee-high leather boots. He resembled a Nordic Rami Malek, with the white blonde hair and icy blue eyes of a tormented baby goat. He had the shaky, thin limbs of one, too. He gave off the impression that he desperately wanted somebody to hold him, but that if they did, he might shatter into a million pieces. Victor was fragile, but in the way that a bomb was. This fragility, contrasted with his failed attempts to come off as intimidating, was initially what drew Sam to him. But Sam was also somewhat repulsed by it. Speaking of actors who were known for playing troubled characters, Ash could understand why Sam might be attracted to someone like Victor, because she herself had always wanted to sleep with Evan Peters. More specifically, she wanted to fuck him when he was dressed up as some variety of murderer. Before Tumblr became Blather, she used to scroll through edits of him dancing around shirtless in tinted aviator glasses for hours. Called a doctor. There must be something wrong with me. ... However, she did not understand what Sam could have ever possibly found enticing about Victor in particular. When Ash told Sam about her burning desire for Evan Peters, Thon came to the realization that if Thon had played up Shiz's own vague resemblance to the actor Moore, Thon would have never found himself in this position. Hundreds of hybristophilic old chicks from Tumblr would have been lining up to fuck Shim. Thon would have never had to resort to dating people like Victor. Before Victor met Sam, he had previously dated one of 2 schizophrenic meth addicts that he was then living with. Matthew, not to be confused with the other man, Mateo, who once kicked him in the balls so hard that he was sent to the emergency room with a case of testicular torsion. Matthew was eventually captured and sent to prison after multiple arson-related incidents which shocked the town. After Matthew's arrest, Victor was left in the apartment with Mateo and Zyphira, Mateo's girlfriend, until he moved back into the family home following the disappearance of his father. Sam had met Victor at a seance hosted by the PsyOps Foundation, also known as the Portland Society of Incomprehensible Occult Phenomena. They had hit it off, bonding over their shared love for old war films and drinking various household substances to get high. PsyOps was run by a pair of twin brothers named Moon Unit and Motorhead. You could only distinguish between the two because Moon Unit had a dyed yellow mohawk and Motorhead had a purple hawk-mo. Whenever Victor craved comfort, he would repeatedly play out a scene not unlike Vincent Turson's flapping seal routine. It was convincing the first time, but by the second or third time, Sam became suspicious. Victor would intentionally starve himself all day, invite a couple of PSYOPs members to his house, and then convince one of them to drive to the liquor store and buy him alcohol. He would drink to the point where he was completely incoherent. He would stumble around making a high-pitched whining noise and head to the bathroom where he would collapse over the toilet. Someone would then take it upon themselves to rescue him, cradling him in their arms like a baby. Eventually, Cyphera somehow wormed her way into PSYOPs. She made serious allegations of hypnosis-related sexual misconduct against Victor. He was promptly kicked out, although he claimed that she was the one who had actually attacked him. No one really knew what actually happened, but they sided against him nonetheless. Ash had a theory that it was a West Memphis 3 kind of situation, where Damien Eccles was the scapegoat because he had so much freaky shit in his house, but that one kid's dad with the misshapen head was the person who actually did it. Victor, feeling abandoned by his friends as well as Sam, was driven insane by loneliness. He began to research an ancient ritual known as the m.n.m-d.r operation, in which one could summon their holy guardian angel. He began the intensive and grueling process, which involved a long period of ritual purification, self-imposed isolation, and daily prayer. At the 18-month mark, the ritual was finally complete. He drew the sigillum Dei on his living room floor in chalk and waited. His angel did appear, but she did not look anything like he imagined. This was an angel with scabbed wings, dark like a vulture's. He sat there crouching on the ground and quivering in terror. Towering over the short man, she looked down at him with milky white eyes and gave him a sly smile, revealing her teeth. Like a geisha's, they were painted in inky black. In that moment, she decided that she would teach Victor a lesson about messing with forces that he did not understand. A man who looked like a more masculine version of him rose from the floorboards and grabbed the gas mask on the bookshelf. "I'm Kakin, der homosexuel," shouted the man in a thick accent. A crowd of other men dressed in Hugo Boss uniforms appeared and turned to stare at Victor. The specter of a headless chicken emerged from a crucifix formed out of bones and began to dance about wildly as blood spurted from the stump that used to be its throat. Another man showed up to retrieve one of his treasured belongings, a Yushanka embroidered with a hammer and sickle. "Fasciskaya Gatina!" he screamed at the Germans. David Koresh began to crawl out of a Bible Victor bought from eBay, which had somehow survived the fiery destruction of the Branch Davidian compound. Victor was astonished by the cult leader's hipster-esque taste in clothing. Koresh was quite ahead of his time fashion-wise. With his mullet and rainbow t-shirt, he would fit right in at a PSYOPs meeting. The angel pointed towards Victor, commanding the entities to go forth and possess the vessel that was his body. He writhed in agony on the floor as a giant gash bloomed in the middle of his chest, and the spirits entered him through it. They jumped inside the hole which led to the inside of his ribcage, like a tubular slide at an amusement park. Victor, or rather Legion as Victor, laid still as a corpse for a moment before bolting upright. He began to search around the house for various materials he could use to assemble a pipe bomb. He worked on the deadly weapon for hours before hopping on his bike and traveling down to the PSYOPs headquarters, carrying it in his backpack. He set the timer on the bomb to 3 hours, around the time that Moon Unit would get back from his shift at the trauma-informed hair salon, and left it inside the mailbox. Sure enough, Moon Unit would return and check to see if the new pendulum he ordered the previous week had arrived. As soon as he opened the mailbox, he was greeted by the bomb, which was mere minutes away from going off. Panicking, he began trying to sever the wires with his teeth. His attempt at dismantling it backfired in a horrendous manner. In the months that followed, pieces of Moon Unit would be found even in the most remote areas of Oregon. When Zalara, Moon Unit's close friend and a talented professional Play-Doh artist, heard the news, she became consumed by thoughts of revenge. She spent days locked in her studio, molding an incredibly accurate model of Victor. One might mistake her for a mad scientist, slaving away inside her laboratory with her goggles and wild hair. "You will die!" she screeched as she slowly lowered the doll into a glass box before burying it in her backyard. Legion as Victor sat on the sofa inside his dark living room. The police had been searching for the culprit for weeks, but since the explosion destroyed any traces of DNA evidence, they could not find him. Suddenly, he found himself levitating. Gravity turned itself inside out, and the ceiling above him began to cave in. Chunks of asbestos crumbled and fell to the floor as he was launched into the stratosphere. He was now truly alone, accompanied only by the vast darkness of space and the flickering stars around him. Like a mine, he began to feel up the walls of the invisible box he was now trapped in. Victor Krappenhoff never saw the inside of a jail cell, at least not in the sense that's usually described. But he was imprisoned inside of a 5-dimensional hypercube, hurtling through space-time, where he would remain until his physical body died and the spirits inside him escaped to go torment another unfortunate soul. The obituary of Moon Unit Warren, published in a local newspaper. Moon Unit Warren was martyrized in a tragic accident last week at the age of 33. He exploded after bravely attempting to dismantle a bomb that had been placed in the mailbox outside of the PSYOPs Foundation, a community center which he ran. His wife Zendaya also passed away yesterday. Overwhelmed by the magnitude of her grief, she took her own life, using her pyrokinetic abilities in a self-induced act of spontaneous combustion. Moon Unit ran a trauma-informed hair salon and donated a significant portion of his income to the Research Center for Canine Autism. He requested that his moon dust be scattered at Twilight Cove, the world's first and only nudist beach for elderly swingers. He is survived by his brother Motorhead Warren. He will be dearly missed by his friends and family as well as the canine neurodivergent community. If you see us in the club, we'll be acting real nice. Meanwhile, in Dime Square, ... Adam Algis lay sprawled out on a beach chair, soaking up the warm rays of the sun and repeatedly refreshing his blather feed. His skin was already blistering and peeling from yesterday's tanning session, but he was determined to get that Mediterranean glow from when he went surfing in Florida the following week. Besides, everyone on Blather said that he would be able to tan easily once he cut seed oils out of his diet. Adam was now the author of the world's #1 best-selling eco-accelerationist manifesto. A scrawny writer from the New York Times with a patchy beard called it a lurid piece of Turner Diaries fan fiction for the digital age, which he took as a compliment. As he continued to scroll mindlessly through his timeline, he came across a post that intrigued him. He checked the location of the account which made it to ensure that it wasn't posted from a bamboo fishing shack in Bangladesh, like so many of these sorts of things were for some inexplicable reason. Surely enough, the account was based in New York. Do you want a total war? Are you sick of race-mixing propaganda in toilet paper commercials, xenoestrogens in your drinking water, and homo-indoctrination in your children's school books? So are we. Join us at the 23rd annual meeting of the Nihilistic Post-Ironic Radical Identitarian Society for the Advancement of the White Race. The event will be held in a secret location. Message the owner of this page for details. Note: the Nihilistic Post-Ironic Radical Identitarian Society for the Advancement of the White Race stands against bigotry and violence. Members of all ethnicities, religions, genders, and sexual identities are welcome as long as they support our cause. He hopped out of his chair and headed inside to mark the event on his calendar. Then he shuffled to the bathroom, where he began to lather his entire body in a soothing milky skin cream called Smooth Max trademark, hoping that it would alleviate the pain of his sunburn. He thought to himself that he had never bothered to check if Smooth Max trademark had any unnatural additives that would hinder his endocrine system's ability to produce testosterone. He looked closer at the jar of cream. Enriched with stem cell technology was written in small letters below the logo. He began to panic and opened Google. Smooth Max, where it made? ? Is Smooth Max made of foreskin from Brizz ceremony? Smooth Max CEO, Wikipedia. There was a link to the Wikipedia page on the founder of the company. He clicked on it and navigated his way to the early life section. He sighed in relief as he read the words, Klaus Smoothenklein was born to a German father and Swedish mother in 1932. When the day of the event arrived, he called the number on the flyer. A muffled, gruff voice spoke. Who's this? Adam Algis. Prove it. What's the 14 words? We must secure the existence of our people and a future for our children. Well, I'll be damned. It really is you, huh? It's on Madison Street, behind the microbrewery. We're glad to have you. Driving down the road in his Easter egg-colored 1974 Dodge Challenger, with the windows down, Adam blasted The Calling, a classic track off Death and June's record Nana. Wearing dark sunglasses with his blonde hair slicked back, he thought he looked pretty suave. He started to worry about the crowd the event might attract. Paula Pink could be here, he thought. I hate Paula Pink. A formerly infamous porn star, Paula Pink had recently started trying to redeem herself by publicly converting to Orthodox Christianity and marketing herself as a right-wing influencer. He felt the tanning peptides he injected every other week and the cheap wine he chugged earlier to prepare himself for the night pulsating through his veins. He began to count the few things that he appreciated about the modern world in his head: cocaine, melanotan, Adderall, and pornography. Magazines starring women with tan lines, beaming smiles, and bouncing natural breasts. Not that new age cam girl crap featuring busted plastic surgery victims like Paula Pink. Oh, and of course he couldn't live without his beloved automobile. With a car, you can go anywhere you want. He pulled up outside and walked into the building. The bouncer smiled and acknowledged his presence with a nod. The man was beefy, with a vampiric goatee. He had broad and highly symmetrical features, but the effect was almost uncanny, as if someone had held up a mirror to one side of his face. He possessed what a journalist describing Tom Cruise once referred to as a quote-unquote very intense friendliness with nothing behind the eyes. The man's welcoming expression didn't make Adam feel at ease. He had the grin of a cannibalistic, prehistoric ape man. In the dark, Adam saw a silhouette. A woman's outline was illuminated by the strobe light behind her, appearing and disappearing as it flashed on and off. A specimen of gargantuan height stood before him, with breasts the size of cantaloupes. She began to approach him, and as she got closer, his smile faded. Her face was pumped full of so much Botox and filler that she resembled a rubber Halloween mask. Just as he feared, it was her, Paula Pink. Her breath reeked of one too many mimosas, and from the looks of it, alcohol wasn't the only liquid she was looking to consume that night. Oh my god! Adam Algis! I love Man Against Time. Thank you. That book was terrible. I'm working on my next one, and it's shaping up to be much better. You're like a delicate little Aryan princess. the precious Snow Queen who rules over the land of Hyperborea. Your skin, your eyes, your hair, it's all perfect. The woman stared at him with a voracious hunger. He feared that at any moment she would leap on him and start gnawing the flesh off his bones. I'm not supposed to be here. My great-great-great-grandmother was one of... ... She made a motion with her hands as if she was telling a campfire story. The Jews! She yelped with dramatic effect, like she was trying to give him a good scare. He laughed nervously, sweat gathering on his pale brow. It's okay. It was not, in fact, okay. Nothing about this situation was okay. I'm sure no one here cares. They don't really mean those things, you know. No one's out to get you. Her expression shifted to a more somber one. Her massive, sausage-shaped lower lip began to quiver, and tears began to cloud her vision as they soaked into her uncanny blue contacts. If we were alive in 1942, would you hide me? She said quietly. She began to emit a pathetic humming vibration that was not unlike the sound of a race car accelerating. Adam recalled a time when he was at his grandmother's funeral, and his cousin started making a similar noise. This caused the young Adam, who was also crying, to stop and start laughing hysterically. His horrified family members stopped weeping as well, silently watching as he completely lost his shit. He cackled and howled as her casket was lowered into the ground. He snapped back to the present moment when he felt a wet droplet hit his face. Paula had started sobbing hysterically and wrapped her meaty arms around the significantly leaner Adam, forcibly pulling him in for a hug. In that moment, pressed up against the sweaty silicone mounds on her chest, he truly thought that he was about to suffocate and die. Panicking, he tried to think of a way to escape. Wait a second, he thought. He grabbed one fleshy balloon in his hand and chomped down as hard as he could. A high-pitched shriek echoed through the building, audible even over the 90s Europop that the DJ was blasting at full volume. In the corner, two women of Slavic descent watched as he bolted out the door, pushing through a dense crowd of Avolian hipsters. They were both maybe 5 pounds too heavy to meet the clinical criteria for anorexia, and they were clearly very upset about it, as they had brought a thermos full of Diet Coke mixed with vodka to the function to share, rather than just ordering White Russians. They turned to each other and began to discuss, speaking in an obnoxiously affected tone with heavy vocal fry, as if their conversation was being broadcasted to a live audience. No way. You're kidding me. Kartoshka, we gotta talk about this on the next episode of the pod. We Real Slim. The Miami Beach influencers. 7 inside the limousine, heading to Baccarat Club. We Real Slim. We go gym. We get lean. We talk mean. We smoke meth. We bench press. We don't goon. We die soon. Frenulum. A blueprint for the new gay America torn from the notebook of Triple Sam. The new character design for Lola Bunny has been unveiled. She has been totally desexualized, stripped of her curves. They're making jokes about it on Blather. Lola Bunny got top surgery, they say. She's a victim of the woke agenda. This is no laughing matter. Lola Bunny is a proud transsexual woman and trailblazing athlete. As punishment for participating in women's sports, she has been forcefully detransitioned underneath fascistic America. I will not stand for Nazi subversion, abuse, and destruction of our precious leporins. This is real shit. Not a sapphic romance novel or a piece of fan fiction about men loving men. I never want to hear anyone speak the name of Vivian Medrano ever again outside of a memorial service. No more KK Kids, KK cartoons with vaguely queer-coded characters and soothing ukulele theme songs. Lola Bunny is the only animated character who will enter the kingdom of homo heaven. God, please, kill everyone now! Send the rapture. Drop the bomb. Let the streets run red with blood so that queer art can flourish. The problem is that none of you rich kids who go to RISD and CalArts know what suffering is, and you're the only ones that get pushed by the algorithm. You will be the first on the guillotine. Do not ask me for tips on how to look more visibly queer. Do not ask me for directions to the nearest gender-inclusive hair salon. They said that we are not real men. We are the only real men who exist. Real glows rainbow in the dark with nightmare vision. Real does not need to come out because he struts down the street dazzling brilliantly like an endangered tropical bird. Real does not seek permission to exist or breathe or fuck or do anything from heteroid mutants because he knows that he is Adam, the first Homo sapien. He did not have to engage in heteroid sexual perversions to bring the first woman into the world. Adam ripped out his own rib to create Eve. Eve was a transsexual. Real it does not beg to be understood or even accepted. He stands alone. Punk rock is not punk rock. Pee Wee Herman was punk rock. Yoko Ono was punk rock. Robert Johnson was punk rock. Screamin' Jay Hawkins was punk rock. Disco, yes, I mean bell-bottom jeans and sequins, was punk rock. Many have heard Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees, but few have ever really listened to it. Barry Gibb's lyricism conjures up visions of societal decay and collapse, a burning post-apocalyptic wasteland where the Statue of Liberty once stood. He says that his life is going nowhere. He begs for somebody to please help him. This song is infinitely more existential and more well-written than any morose 1980s goth track from England. A bunch of these post-punk guys actually killed themselves, and yet none of them could write a single song as depressing as Stayin' Alive. The punk rockers shouted, "Death to disco," when what they really wanted to say was, "Hand me a lighter so I can burn these f***s alive." Disco was a multi-ethnic, pansexual, drug-fueled, certifiably groovy movement for cool cats in Harlem. Punk rockers were bored white kids from the suburbs rebelling because mommy wouldn't give them $10 for a six-pack of beer. This was true in 1976, and it is even more evident today. I hate hardcore kids, and I always have. Fuck your beat-down hardcore band. Everybody knows the Sex Pistols were industry plants, and they were still more punk rock than you. No, I don't care that you have a girl bassist. The only good thing to come out of the punk rock movement was new wave, because all the new wave singers were unmanly, frail autistic men with wobbly voices, like David Byrne, Andy Partridge, and Gary Newman. Emo was invented in response to the boneheaded macho attitude of hardcore kids, and then it was immediately colonized by MTV like everything else. Television and the radio chewed it into an easily digested, flavorless paste, and spit it back into the mouths of every angsty tween in America. Riot Girl and homocore went to shit after Gloss broke up, and were replaced by indie-flavored tenderqueer bullcrap like Girlwood. LOL. All hardcore kids should be shipped off to New Orleans and promptly crushed to death in a sludge metal mosh pit. All these quote-unquote people do is post call-out threads on Blather about how so-and-so gave them an STD, or sold a balloon full of nitrous to a high schooler, or dated someone 3 seconds younger than them to distract people from how their bassist has a Totenkopf tramp stamp and more rape allegations than Jared Leto. I'm talking about the girl bassist, the diversity hire of the band. That one. She's got Charlie Manson eyes. This is the third time in a row now that Hobo Richie has been hosed down by cops outside of the Taco Bell in the Pearl District. Again, he has been caught smearing his shit around nearby cars, entrapping them in some sort of fecal salt circle. Richie shits because he cannot scream. The poor sucker was born without vocal cords, you see. He smears his shit everywhere precisely because he can't explain why he does it in the first place. "Richie, goddammit, you've done it again," they say. "You gotta communicate with us, Richie. You can't just expect people to understand." But how can he make them understand? He has no words with which he might communicate his message to us. When he tries to speak, a horrible kind of creaking noise comes from his throat, like he's trying to open a door with rusted hinges. And behind that door, maybe you would find a codex that would help you decipher what he's trying to say, but you'll never be able to open that door, or even find the general location of the room, because you can't understand the directions that he's giving you in the first place. It's nobody's fault, really. You can't blame Richie for trying to convey these concepts to us in the only way that he knows how. And you can't really blame the man who keeps calling the cops on Richie, either. How is he supposed to decode the hidden meaning behind Richie's shit sigils? After all, Sappho's most beautiful poem still sounds like gibberish to those who don't speak a lick of Greek. A few blocks away from the campsite where Richie resided, a woman had recently adopted a highly reactive cat. She jokingly named her new pet Percival. As it turned out, the name became a self-fulfilling prophecy. She had not been informed that Percival's 3 previous owners had all returned him to the shelter because they could not handle his behavior. Within the span of just a year, the kind-hearted animal lover who'd only ever had pure intentions watched her life fall apart. Her boyfriend of 2 years left her because Percival stabbed him in the eye with his claw, leading to a life-threatening infection that left the man partially blind. She lost all of her friends because Percival attacked everyone who came over. She had to rehome her other beloved cat, who she had raised since he was a kitten, because Percival almost killed him. Every inch of the house stunk of urine. Her landlord evicted her because of the mess. Since she had quit her job to care for Percival full-time, she ended up living in a tent next to Richie. In another, completely unrelated incident, which occurred in 1984, Ash's third cousin, Prudence Palmer, who she shared her perfect ski slope-shaped nose with, was snatched from her home in the extremely safe Mormon community she lived in during the middle of the night. She had been kidnapped by a psychotic cult leader named Jebediah Hunt and one of his many wives, Hepzibah. Prudence's parents, feeling sorry for the man, had offered him an opportunity to help fix a leaky pipe in exchange for some cash. He had been couch surfing for the past few years, kicked out from home after home as he repeatedly stole from do-gooders and smoked meth in the presence of their kids. Jebediah resembled a Caucasian Yakub, with a beard so long it nearly reached his crotch. In an older photo of him and Hepzibah, which was revealed in a documentary about the case later on, he appeared clean-shaven. The two had the same crazed, bulging eyes, an unsettling smile which looked like it had been photoshopped onto their faces. They forced Prudence to travel with them across the nation, pushing her around in a wheelchair. They made her wear bandages which covered her entire face so that she would not be recognized, and claimed that she was a burn victim that they had saved from an orphanage. By the good grace of Russell M. Nelson, Prudence was eventually discovered and returned to her loving family. However, the body of another girl had been found in a nearby lake while the investigation into Prudence's disappearance was still ongoing. When it was determined that the girl was not Prudence, she was quickly forgotten. She didn't have blonde hair or blue eyes or a radiant smile. She probably was never as cute as Prudence, although the state of her body was so badly decomposed that it was hard to tell what she looked like when she was alive. To this day, it is impossible to find any information on the other girl. There was no memorial for her. A news article about her was never published. She is only ever mentioned briefly in reference to the Prudence Palmer story. No one ever came to claim her as their daughter, lover, friend, or cousin, and she was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere near the body of water which her corpse had been pulled from. The Bong Lady. Rumors of a voluptuous cryptid dressed in hot pink had been circulating in the Portland area. Thousands of police reports piled up which went absolutely nowhere. Bong Lady sighting in local playground. Read one. The Bong Lady has been spotted again, sunbathing in a graveyard. Many cops were obsessed with the case, but they couldn't decide what they'd charge her with if they actually managed to catch her. Pot had been decriminalized, but walking around town with a glittery bong in one's hand was a legal gray area. Public intoxication, maybe? Public indecency. When she'd kick back on a tombstone to hit her bong, she'd flash horrified onlookers who came to leave bouquets for their loved ones. She might have been considered a minor in possession, but they weren't sure of her age. As it turned out, the Bong Lady was actually a young woman named Star Rosenkraus. When Sam first moved to Portland, it wasn't like there wasn't anything that Fawn missed about his old life. Real chola girls and chola boys. The ones with the spiderweb tattoos and the rosaries around their necks swinging back and forth like a pendulum. Tart strawberries from the local farmer's market. The poster of the Virgin Mary inside his neighbor's bedroom, staring at him from across the street with the judgmental yet caring expression of a concerned mother. The beautiful poison trees with trumpet flowers that seemed to grow everywhere. Sam had tended to moonflower seeds for as long as Thawne could remember. Their way of life was very familiar to him. They only bloomed at night. They only allowed anyone to touch them when the sun had gone down and the whole town was submerged in inky darkness. But there were no moonflowers in Oregon, so instead Thawne just went to the gazebo with his new friends. Frankie and Kiana had a permanently stoned affectation. Something about their energy made you feel nostalgic. People are portals. These girls were ghosts. They came from a bygone era. When you looked at them, you felt like you had been transported to the summer of 2017, the height of the Zandemic, before the few underground rappers who didn't suck died and everything went to shit. You could hear the sound of skateboard wheels on hot granite and smell the mango cloud emerging from the nearest bathroom stall. They'd lounge around in the nearby park, discussing their plans to scrape together enough money to buy the nearest designer drug. Sam's first few months of unemployment were fun, but by the 6th or 7th, Fawn started questioning just how mentally taxing it would really be to become a prostitute. Then came Star, and as her name suggested, she entered Sam's life like a comet shooting across the sky, burning brightly before crashing into the earth and leaving a crater the size of a small city. She was a pretty girl, albeit almost cartoonish in appearance. She certainly turned heads everywhere she went. No one could deny that. Every inch of her body was covered in fur and rhinestones. She refused to wear anything that wasn't hot pink or black. She wouldn't go outside without at least 20 accessories, giant hoop earrings, massive fuzzy boots, and a pair of counterfeit Versace sunglasses, just to name a few. She lived, breathed, and shit glitter. Sam had an instant connection with her that Thawne didn't have with the other two. Thawne was a little bit more put together than Frankie and Kiana, outwardly, but if you stripped him naked, you'd see that Thawne was bursting at the seams. They were all bruised and banged up on the outside, but on the inside Sam was arguably more screwed up than they were. As funny as it may sound, Sam always got this feeling that they were judging shit. They were the trouble type, and Thawne was just plain old strange. But in Star's world, there was no such thing as too much. No matter how shameful you thought your secrets were, she had a story to one-up you. She was committed to being totally unapologetically herself. For the most part, Sam found this to be an admirable trait, but her behavior was beyond rebellious. It embarrassed everyone around her. She would ramble about the grotesque details of her sex life, within earshot of a little old lady, show up completely plastered at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, expecting Sam to babysit her, and start fights with random strangers. It was a cool Friday in October, about a week before Halloween, when Star got into an argument with Frankie and Kiana that would cause the friend group to implode in on itself. The air was thick with the scent of cigarettes and crisp leaves crunching underneath their footsteps. The three had decided to stop by a local McDonald's on their way to the parade. The neon yellow arch emitted a spectral glow like a lighthouse in the darkness. They had all been drinking, Frankie more so than the others. Frankie, mistaking Star's burger for her own, took a bite out of it. Star snapped at her, and Frankie snapped back. "Here's a fat-ass fucking cheeseburger," she roared, before hurling it at the wall. Star, who was at least self-aware enough to understand that she was no match for a girl who once went to court for attacking the local boys with a flamethrower, ran out onto the street crying. From that moment onwards, they were sworn enemies. With the other two out of the way, Sam and Star grew closer. They spent so much time together that Fawn was considered an honorary member of her family, and Fawn was able to observe the dynamics of her household through an almost journalistic lens. Sam lived like Jane Goodall among the apes. Star's mother, Nancy, was more like a sister to her than a maternal figure, having been so young when she had her. The woman was striking, built like a Valkyrie with piercing blue eyes. She told battle stories of the days when she was a gun-toting stripper with a boyfriend in the mafia. She was an occultist who believed in the law of attraction. She told Sam that money was energy, and that you could have anything you wanted simply by acting as if you already had it. Sam always listened and nodded his head, but deep down Fawn didn't know if Fawn really believed in all of that New Age stuff, despite regularly attending PSYOPs meetings. Star's father was a real piece of work, Nancy would say. Fucker punched me so hard they had to put a metal implant in my stomach. I gave him 1,000 chances, and he still chose heroin over us every single time. The cyborg woman stood before Sam and lifted her shirt to reveal her stomach. Feel it. Surely enough, there was a layer of surgical steel hidden beneath the soft flesh of her womb. Nancy's second husband, Star's stepfather, was a shriveled, skinny man who seemed to survive on soda alone. His desk was constantly cluttered with Pepsi cans. He would hog the bathroom for hours at a time. He never actually seemed to use the toilet. He would just lock himself inside and chain smoke. "I've known this man for 15 years, and I've never smelled his shit," she once remarked to Sam. "He's an NPC, one of those clones from Kazakhstan sent to destroy me. I know it, and once I break out of this matrix that they got me trapped in, I'll never see him again. He'll evaporate into a line of code." Star and Nancy would go everywhere together, often wearing matching outfits. Nancy in purple fur, Star dressed in pink as always. Star's mother funded her entire lifestyle, and she wasn't ashamed to admit it. In fact, she was proud of it. She didn't have a job, and she didn't want one. The two had an unbreakable bond, but when they fought, they became two wild animals tearing into each other's throats. Star despised her grandmother, understandably. It was clear that the woman wasn't quite right in the head. She owned a bong bigger than Star's. At night, when she thought no one was awake, she'd creep into the living room, strip completely naked, and chant incantations. She'd beg the universe for more money, money that she would blow on lottery tickets from Dollar Tree. On a Wednesday night, Sam had gone to the bathroom at the crack of dawn, one of the few times when Star's stepfather was not in there. When Sam walked out, Fawn thought that Fawn had seen a ghost out of the corner of his eye. Just a flash of pale, wrinkled skin shining in the moonlight. "You just barely missed it," said Nancy, cackling. One day, Star's grandmother snuck into her room and stole her pot. She begged Nancy to retrieve it, but Nancy just scolded her. "You spoiled brat! You had enough pot to last you a lifetime!" The volcano exploded. Nancy started to scream, and Star ran back to her bedroom. After a particularly bad fight, she'd go into a trance that lasted for hours. She required an audience for everything that she did, and her suffering was no exception. Even when no one was around to see it, she was always putting on a show. Her eyes glazed over, she'd begin to rant for about 2 hours straight. "I will be a star, and I'll prove all of them wrong. I'll kill anyone who stands in my way, and if I can't, my mother will walk in on me one of these days, and I'll be falling at the mouth with a bottle of lithium in my hand. I want her to be the one to find me." Occasionally, she'd stand up to grab an object and throw it across the room, sometimes directly above Sam's head, or grab a lighter to burn herself with. Sam simply sat there on the bed in a fetal position, paralyzed. Any attempt to comfort her would only lead her to push him away. As Sam sat there listening to her monologue, Fawn realized something. Her life was defined by stuff. She was crammed full of empty calories, always threatening to explode. She often told Shiv that all of her other quote-unquote friends were handbags, aesthetically pleasing cardboard cutouts that she could prop up for photo shoots. Her bedroom was a sacred space, and she guarded it as if it were a safe full of gold. Fawn once witnessed her snap at a guest after spilling a tablespoon worth of ice cream on the comforter. Fawn forced himself to memorize the seemingly endless list of rules, lest Fawn face her wrath. The door had to remain shut at all times, except for Tuesdays at 3:45 p.m., when it could be opened at an angle of 45 degrees. Fawn didn't understand it at first, but that entire room was a shrine to her lost childhood. Closets bursting full of bright pink tutus, shelves lined with dolls, a mountain of stuffed animals on her bed. It seemed cruel to try to fix her. Most of the time she was happy in her own strange way. And even if that joy was all a chemically induced illusion, Sam had no right to shake her and tell her to snap out of it. She had created this delicate little ecosystem for herself, and only her, and she basked in the artificial sunlight like a caged lizard. And Sam was a hypocrite for judging her. Fawn truly was. Alan Watts always said that when you get the message, it's time to hang up the phone. But Fawn kept hitting the replay button on the answering machine just to hear her voice again. Star often judged Frankie and Kiana for their choices in life, seemingly blind to the similarities between herself and them. "Those dirt-broke junkies think that they have the right to act the way that they do because they had a shitty childhood. I had it so much worse, and I don't act like that," she'd hiss. Sam replied that not everyone was a survivor. Some were just victims. But she wasn't able to understand what Fawn was saying, even though she herself was trapped in a glass cage. She couldn't see it. She had so thoroughly convinced herself that she was one of the lucky ones, that she had made it out. More than any of the other stuff that Star held so close to her heart, she adored ketamine. She practically forced Sam to do it multiple times a week. Thawne couldn't even count all of the times Thawne found himself on the roof of a random building next to a puddle of her vomit, with little to no recollection of how Thawne got there. When you're on ketamine, your body is simply a meat sack that you can unzip and step right out of. You are no longer a character. You are the director, peeping into the zoetrope. You can see every individual frame in the film. Time ceases to exist. There is no past, present, or future. Now is all that there is, and even then, you're not sure if it's real. You are walking along the spine of a snake that eats its own tail. Eventually, Sam realized why she loved the feeling so much. All the ketamine freaks Thawne knew did it because they wanted to be able to step outside of themselves for a moment. Thawne always thought that there was a cruel irony in that. The way that every attempt to escape your body only tethers you further to the physical realm. You can starve yourself, you can get your ribs surgically broken and rearranged, order 3 nose jobs and a pair of breast implants. You can climb the highest mountains without any ropes to stop you from falling and smashing your skull in. You can walk the thin line suspended between this world and the next. But even in these moments where you are closest to the veil, the bodily vessel you are trapped in is still driving the ship. In November, Sam and Star decided to take some ecstasy together. Sam's second encounter with that magic little pill. Around half an hour after Thawne popped one, Thawne started to think that something had gone horribly wrong. It's never the same as the first time. The whole world still hummed like a dying radiator, but it didn't sing along to the sound of Shiz's heartbeat the same way it did in June. They were sitting around an imaginary campfire, poking the dying embers that were their serotonin receptors. In the taxi ride home, Sam was startled by the sound of retching next to Shim, and immediately started digging around for a bag. When they got back to the house, Thawne found Star curled up on the floor in a fetal position. For around 10 minutes, she could only muster up the strength to say one word. Sorry, she babbled. Thawne dragged her off the floor, and she began to kiss Shim. She kept saying that Thawne was the best friend that she'd ever had, and that she'd never forgive herself for how she had treated Shim. Sam didn't feel whatever Thawne was supposed to at that moment. It was hard to pay attention to the words coming out of her mouth when she was looking at Shim with that vacant stare. Her blown-out pupils made her resemble a taxidermied deer. Sam wrote these things down in Shiz's notebook so Thawne wouldn't forget. There was a hungry ghost inside Shiz's skull eating away at Shiz's gray matter. Star didn't read, not because she didn't like to learn, but because she could never stay still. But that night she did, and she listened quietly as Sam recited a poem Thawne had written a week prior. The left hand of God will spare the rod, and the spoiled child will rot, in clouds of candy floss, pickpocket lip gloss, and she dreams in technicolor. Of a perfect life, an answer for strife, a room in a pale mauve hotel. Around the totem pole she goes, she'll grow up and dance with the wind. I still paint my eyes in forget-me-not blue, remember the original taste of you. Cane sugar Mexico golden brown hue, like dope in a needle the size of you. Remember when I was your junkie friend, plastered on the pavement where the streets never end. And you were the promise, and you were the star. And I drank from your well, and they said you'd go far. And you bathed in the water and the waiting room light, and you'll be angry for a while, say I left you behind. But really I just wandered off into the night, where 1,000 holes in my head light up the blank skies, and clouds become smoke in a mirror. I am gossamer silk in your Venus and fur. I am the most bitter fruit in your cherry liquor. I am the cyanide within the core. You are the sweet flesh that keeps me all warm. I am a dull blade, you're a pocket pistol. I am a hand grenade, you're a nuclear missile. I'm a street light, you're a disco ball. I am full of secrets, you have none at all. I carry a bit of stardust with me everywhere I go. And when I have you in my pocket, you'll never really be alone. I contort myself to fit inside a heart-shaped locket you will hide in a drawer filled with dollar bills, yesterday's dust and unmarked pills. What do you get the girl who already has it all? A butterfly trapped behind the glass, a bicycle and a blade of grass, a way to turn back, the innocence of a child again. When Sam woke up in the morning, she was gone, and she had taken all the color in the world with her. The sky was the shade of nothing. On New Year's Eve, Thawne decided that Thawne was done with her shit for good. Sam thought that when Thawne cut Star out of Shiz's life, Thawne would feel relieved, but Thawne didn't. Thawne was overwhelmed with bone-deep exhaustion. Thawne couldn't sleep, but also couldn't drag himself out of bed. Thawne didn't care for small talk. Sam had no desire to distract himself by interacting with other acquaintances. Star never really knew Sam. No one did, but she came pretty damn close. The worst part of it all was that nobody else knew her either. And if they did, they hadn't seen even a fraction of what Sam had borne witness to. She had no social security number, no birth certificate, no driver's license. She might as well have been a figment of Shiz's imagination. When she disappeared, it was almost like she had never existed at all. She really did live up to her reputation. Sam felt as if Thawne had been attacked by some sort of cryptid. Thawne was covered in scars, but there was no evidence to prove exactly who or what did it. Sam fantasized about leaving more than Thawne ever did about finding somebody who would stay. Ever since Sam was a child, Thawne knew that Thawne wanted to leave. School, jobs, places, people, situations, the world itself. Thawne had long since stopped praying for somebody to finally see Shim, and started hoping that they would feel the weight of Shiz's absence, even if Shiz's presence was invisible to them. Thawne was a leaver and a collector. That was who Sam was. Thawne watched, jotted down observations, sometimes made suggestions, which no one ever took. Then Thawne would leave. That January, Sam found himself alone yet again. I'll get through this, Thawne told himself. I've done it before. I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. But it never seemed to get any easier. The only things that displayed any signs of life, movement, or change were the trees that bristled in the wind, manipulated by an unseen force, and even then they were brittle and dying. Hollow on the inside, they emitted a sound like a detuned flute. But there was no music to be heard. Just the deafening noise of Sam's own thoughts, the weight of the secrets Thawne carried for people that were now strangers to Shim. Star used to dance everywhere she went. Now even the birds refused to sing for Sam. Thawne no longer took refuge in nature. It was a monastery built on top of catacombs. The stillness and the silence was so loud. It seemed to taunt Shim. It was louder even than the engines of the fighter jets that used to speed through the sky back when Thawne used to live near a military base. Death is a frequency, and it is very much alive. The solitude of winter was brutal in its own way, for sure, but what Sam really dreaded was the summer. It didn't matter how many chemicals were pumping through the bloodstream of that town, the party was over. Thawne got so used to being by himself that Thawne forgot how to speak. Conversations with the tulpa in his head were exhausting enough. The more time passed, the less Sam desired to feel understood or loved or simply just not alone, which was strange because that was all Thawne had ever wanted. Sam remembered something his father had said when he took Shim to the beach as a child. Sam was scared, terrified even, but his father kept repeating a mantra as Thawne stepped carefully into the ocean. Be still. Just let the water take you. Don't be afraid of drowning. The same salt that stings your eyes keeps you afloat. A fate worse than death. Sam ran into Frankie at the carnival, a few months after Thawne and Star had their falling out. They went back to Frankie's house, and the two hung out for a couple of hours, but it wasn't the same. Frankie's skin was stretched so tightly over her skull that she resembled a wire skeleton wrapped in papier-mâché. Usually, she would always have a fresh dye job. Her hair remained perpetually neon green, no matter how badly she was doing or how little money she had left in her bank account. But this time, she had let it fade to a murky bog water kind of color. How's the whole sobriety thing going, Frankie? It's going great. Yeah, really, really good. She spoke with the flat, chemically lobotomized tone that only long-term benzodiazepine users have. Sam tried to remember if Frankie had always been like this. Maybe she's telling the truth, Thawne thought. Maybe I'm a bad person. Frankie's father was downstairs, glued to the couch as always, drinking a can of cheap beer and listening to a fiery sermon on the radio. Sam could hear the preacher's voice even from Frankie's room. An evil has taken root in the heart of the people, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it has. Satan's come round again, knocking at every door in America. Rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, there are fates worse than death. A scrap TV interview with Kiana. The anchorwoman. Kiana, the police think that Frankie Blackwell's death was an accident, but not everyone agrees. Your neighbor has said that he saw a girl dressed in some kind of Halloween costume leave Frankie's house through the back door the day that she died. Have you ever seen this girl before? And do you think that she could have sold Frankie the pills that killed her? And if so, do you think Frankie's death was a murder? Kiana, Frankie wouldn't do this. She wouldn't just leave us behind. She was a little impulsive, not careless, never careless. She wasn't this fuck-up like people said she was. It wasn't like she had this grand plan to die at 19 of a drug overdose. She had goals and shit, things that she actually wanted to do with her life. She just adopted a kitten. She always said she had wanted to be a veterinarian. And the part that pisses me off the most is that if I told someone that, they'd think it was because she wanted to steal the ketamine they used to put the animals under anesthesia or something. That's all she was to you people. A junkie. She didn't, you know what? I don't even know why I'm talking to you right now. You come here thinking you're going to shove your camera at me and make some sort of documentary about this so more people who will never have to deal with something like this in their entire lives can watch it while they eat their microwave dinner. Gawk at the freaks and go, God, that's so horrible. And it is. You can't fucking fathom how horrible it is. And after all this, you're still going to edit out half of what I'm saying because they can't show that part on TV. Get that thing out of my face. The anchor woman. All right, cut. Varicose, comatose, senile. Triple Sam told everybody Thawne knew that his 20th birthday party would be hosted at his house. However, 2 weeks before the planned event, both of Sam's parents fell ill at the same time. His father, Murphy, was suffering from a bursitis flare-up. His right leg had to remain propped up at all times and wrapped in a flexible ice pack. His mother, Indra, went through knee replacement surgery. She was placed on an oxycodone diet, and a hospital bed was moved into the living room. They were both physically unable to leave their home. At night, Sam was kept awake by the horrible mechanical hum of the CPAP machine, which was attached to his father's face like some kind of alien parasite, constantly expanding and decompressing a modern-day iron lung. Sam's parents tried to tell Shim that this was just a temporary situation, and that everything would be back to normal in a couple of weeks. We're still the spryest 60-somethings, you know, chirped Indra. Sam knew that it was bullshit. The truth was that this is how it starts. And Sam thought his parents were relatively good people. Great people, even, compared to the vast majority of mothers and fathers throughout time. This meant that they would never live as long as his grandmother Esther. Esther was the kind of person who would correct you when you said good morning and say that you should call it a good national day of mourning because no morning was a good morning when innocent Christians in Kazakhstan were being firebombed by psychotic Muslim terrorists every day. She was a woman who seemed to live entirely off spite. Even at her ancient age, she held on to the anorexic rituals that she picked up as a young woman. Yet somehow, despite never eating or drinking, she remained. Like a shaved greyhound, she was silver and wrinkled but highly agile. And like all vampires, whether sanguine or psychic, she would probably conquer death entirely. Sam tried to make himself look at Shiz's current living situation in a more positive light. Maybe this would be the event that forced Shim into true independence and out of the semi-adolescent, somewhat stunted lifestyle that Thon had grown accustomed to. But Thon just couldn't gaslight himself into being happy about any aspect of it. To make matters worse, Thon had been forced into the basement, which was now almost empty because everything had been moved into the living room for Indra's convenience. Thon was not allowed to go upstairs because Indra constantly complained that she could hear Shim pacing around from below. Any microscopic movement would trigger an invisible tripwire that sent her spiraling. Everything that Indra wanted to happen had to happen right now. Nothing could ever wait, not even for a minute. If she needed cerulean paint from the store, you had to drive to Home Depot this instant and pick it up for her. And no, it could not have even the slightest undertone of phthalo green. There was an incident where Sam had to walk back home from Ash's dorm at 6 a.m. on acid in December to return one specific winter coat to her. Sam wasn't allowed to borrow any of Indra's 5 other winter coats, of course, because if Thon did, Thon would forget about it and leave it somewhere like the fucking respectful young man / woman that Thon was. Indra often told Sam that she cared about Shim deeply, but she was protective of Shim to the degree that it was almost suffocating. Maybe Sam could escape if Thon tried harder, but Indra managed to hold Shim hostage, or rather convince Shim to imprison himself, by weaponizing guilt and reminding Shim of Shiz's incompetence. In a loving and gentle way, of course. "I have a responsibility to keep you alive," she'd say whenever Sam asked why she never taught Shim how to drive, conjuring up images of Sam's middle school self-mutilation. She often told Shim that Thon could take control of these things if Thon really wanted to. The doctor's appointments, the paperwork, the calls, the emails. But she also told Sam not to come to her complaining when Thon inevitably fucked up or neglected to pick up the phone. Although Sam was ashamed to even admit it, Thon was upset with Shiz's parents for ruining Shiz's birthday party, even if it wasn't their fault. On a deeper level, Thon resented them for having Shim when they were both well into their 40s. From a very young age, Thon was imbued with a constant and agonizing awareness of death that no one else around Shim seemed to be able to grasp. Every moment spent living was a moment spent dying. Thon was consumed by Shiz's own regrets. Thon tried to remind himself of the prayer inscribed on the back of Shiz's father's Alcoholics Anonymous token. "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." But still, Thon couldn't help but feel angry, even if there was nothing Thon could do to change any of it. And things had to have happened the way that they did. Sam overheard Shiz's parents having a conversation about Musubi, the Japanese man whose ongoing torment had been broadcasted on live television. A contestant on some sort of game show / reality TV program / comedy channel / snuff film called Susunu Denpa Shonen. He was stripped of his clothes and forced to survive on prizes he won from magazine sweepstakes until he earned 1 million yen's worth of items. Thousands of people across Japan watched as Musubi slowly lost his mind. He chowed down on dog food and danced around like a maniac, his members swinging around like a helicopter's blade, just barely obscured by an eggplant emoji. They'd locked the guy up in solitary confinement and tortured him for over a year. "That's gotta be lawsuit-worthy," said Murphy. "Maybe things are different over there," Indra replied. Sam thought that if they cared so much about Musubi's plight, they wouldn't have forced their own offspring to spend 4 years locked up in a room with no way of speaking to another human being besides Omegle. One of Sam's biggest regrets was wasting so much of his preteen and adolescent years holed up within the confines of 4 white walls, staring blankly at a computer. If an invisible cameraman had documented Sam's entire life, there'd be thousands of hours worth of footage showing Shim hunched over a glowing screen, scrolling through various websites, forums where Mexican people would pretend to be white nationalists, threads dedicated to bone smashing and mewing and leg lengthening surgery, and countless other horrific forms of surgical mutilation to make you more attractive to people who would only find you attractive because you were now taller or you had a stronger jawline. Image boards were women who felt that they had been slighted by society, and perhaps rightfully so, despite the questionable ways in which they expressed their rage, would congregate to wail and gnash their teeth, to discuss radical feminist literature and postulate on how to morally mandate transsexualism out of existence, as Janice Raymond once wrote. The young Sam had once stumbled across some footage that would haunt him for many years to come. Thon could still hear the crying in his head sometimes. Somehow an image showing the severed torso of a man who'd thrown himself in front of a train was one of the less upsetting things that Thon had seen as a child. There was stuff out there which was so much worse. Videotapes that didn't even involve any blood or guts. Even as an adult, Thon could visualize every frame of that clip Thon had accidentally discovered more clearly than many of his own past experiences. Sam carried his own memories. That was more than enough. Being a vessel for the ones of others was a different issue entirely. None of this would have happened if Shiz's parents did not make the decision to homeschool Shim between the ages of 7 and 11. But again, Sam couldn't blame them for the choices that they had made. After all, they believed that they were doing the right thing. They would never do something that they truly thought would harm Shim. Despite everything, Sam did not consider himself to be someone who had experienced a particularly traumatic childhood, at least not in the traditional sense. There was little yelling and screaming, no foster home or creepy uncle or house fires or dead siblings or even divorce court. Thon had been beaten as a young boy, but never by Shiz's parents. The years that Thon was in public school were marked by constant bullying. Once another student even came up to Shim and kicked Shim in the crotch, completely unprovoked, to figure out if Thon was male or female. Sam understood why the other kids had no desire to befriend Shim when Thon was growing up, but Thon could not figure out why they would go out of their way to antagonize Shim if they thought Thon was potentially dangerous. Sam was the kind of child who would put the roadkill Thon found outside in a Ziploc bag, bring it home, dress it up in a little hat, and then take it to show and tell the next day. Thon did not understand that these sorts of things were socially unacceptable because no one had ever taught Shim how to be normal. They just punished Shim for being strange. Sam had lost his virginity at the age of 11 to an older, more worldly girl in the neighborhood. People frequently told Shim that this was an experience that Thon should probably talk about with a professional, and Thon simply scoffed. Like many young men who had been touched by the babysitter / the teacher / big auntie, Thon had been conditioned to view it as something that wasn't a big deal, or even something to be proud of. Every troubled kid, including Sam, had Daddy by Korn on their playlist, and all of them assumed that it was about being molested by your father. The ongoing struggle with gender identity that persisted throughout Sam's younger years nearly destroyed Shiz's relationship with Shiz's family. It partially contributed to Shiz's decision to quit taking hormones. Shiz's father did not accept Shim, but Sam didn't believe that Murphy's beliefs on the subject came from a phobic place, as it's usually described. Murphy had never been a manly man himself, and he didn't really care about the whole issue either way until Indra decided that it was a problem. Contrary to the stereotypes about fatherless homosexuals, Sam had always been closer and more similar to Murphy than Thon was to Shiz's mother, and so it was particularly painful when Murphy seemingly turned on Shim. When he was Sam's age, Murphy was a crier and an artist, and now as a nearly 70-year-old man, he still was on the inside. When Murphy's own father died, his remaining family members collectively decided that he was the one who would be sent back to Hawaii to temporarily live with and care for the dying man. After all, he was the singular daughter of a woman who bore only sons, and girl children always seem to inherit the burden of these things. Murphy was a deeply emotional man who tried very hard to logic his way out of feeling. It didn't work, of course, but he did it anyway. He became obsessed with Stoicism and convinced Sam to read all of the great philosophers who spearheaded the movement. There were things about the idea that Sam liked, but Thon couldn't help but notice that most of these writers had problems worth being upset about. Epictetus was a slave who walked with a limp because a cruel master intentionally broke his leg. Despite his status as the Emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius had a wife who was consistently unfaithful to him. If anything, when it came to ancient Mediterranean historical figures, Sam was most like Elagabalus, the one who'd run around in public dressed in drag and cause chaos by putting random servants into position of power simply for his own entertainment. Thon recalled a time where Shiz's father warned Shim not to go through with the sex change. When you grow up, you can do whatever you want. He said, you can get as many surgeries as you desire, but that won't change who you really are, any more than bleaching his skin made Michael Jackson white. You'll just be a mutilated freak like him. When Sam heard these words, Shiz's soul left Shiz's body for a moment. Thon wasn't Sam anymore, merely a fragment of Sam's consciousness traveling through space-time. Thon found himself inside of Michael Jackson's room. Thon was so tiny that Thon could see every individual dust particle floating in the air. It looked more like the inside of a home owned by a barren old woman who regretted her decision to never have children than one belonging to the quote-unquote king of pop. The furniture looked like it had been salvaged from the Goodwill bins, garish, cheap, and plated with fake gold. On a table, there was a collection of plates with random infants' faces on them. A Target display featuring a joyful child was lying on the floor. "Sweet baby," read the caption in crimson letters. A note which had seemingly been ripped out of Michael Jackson's journal was taped to the door. In shaky handwriting, a message had been scrawled on the paper with a ballpoint pen. "Discipline with love. No violence. Ever." Suddenly, Sam was no longer in the room. Thon was inside Michael Jackson, or at least what used to be Michael Jackson, and Sam as Michael was lying on a cold steel table. Soon he thought that he would be lowered into the ground in a 24-karat coffin, but right now he was in the same position that he had been in when he came into the world, naked, vulnerable, and eyelinerless. Sam as Michael grew even more confused and frightened as he watched the forensic pathologist begin to carefully cut him down the middle and peel off his incredibly pale flesh. His consciousness now resided inside of the removed skin. He glanced at what remained of his body, which now resembled an anatomy model. He was transferred to a gigantic industrial freezer and locked inside before being eventually defrosted, scraped to remove all remaining gunk, tanned and dried. At one point he was pierced and suspended from the ceiling with giant metal hooks, drooping to the ground. Again, Sam as Michael was transported to a different room. He was now inside an automobile shop, and he was being stretched to completely cover the surface of a vehicle. 2 headlights bulged from his eye sockets. His shrunken nose had been replaced with a hood badge. Where his blindingly white teeth used to be, there was a grill. He realized something. He was a self-driving car. Sam as Michael decided that dying for the second time was preferable to such humiliation. He drove himself out of the shop, running over the foot of one of the men who was working on him. Sam as Michael heard a gruesome crunch and a howl. He continued to speed towards the road. He began to head towards a large tree and collided into it, killing himself instantly and painlessly. The crepe, aka the ongoing cranial rape that permeates every facet of modern life, or alternatively, what happens when a crackhead blows smoke up your nose in an attempt to lower your inhibitions and convince you to do things that you would not otherwise do. Triple Sam, what do you think is the worst thing that can happen to someone? Ash, being sexually abused probably. It's worse than murder for sure. Triple Sam, but are there fates worse than death? Ash, like what? Triple Sam, like working at Jimmy John's piping hot sandwiches for the rest of your life. Before I got fired, I'd always ask my coworkers how long they had been working there. More often than not, they'd say that they had been there since their junior year of high school. These were people in their 50s and 60s. I was molested when I was younger, I guess you could say. And it affected me, of course. I had nightmares and all that. Couldn't even look at my own body in the mirror for a long time, let alone get naked in front of another person. But there were times when I'd be working a 9-hour shift at Jimmy John's, and I'd think to myself that I'd rather relive that day all over again than get stuck there for the rest of my life. Ash, in a way, I guess you could say that all jobs count as a form of prostitution. It's not limited to the workplace either. It's in everything. Every married woman is an underpaid hooker. You can try to fight against it, grow out your armpit hair and all that, but it's pointless. Throwing a temper tantrum doesn't change anything. You can't escape the system. At best, maybe you can find a way to make it work for you. Triple Sam. I mean, maybe, but what if every woman on Earth decided to grow her armpit hair out? Would that change anything? Ash, there's no point in wondering about these things because they won't ever happen. Triple Sam, I guess you're right. Women sure love a gilded cage. You know, regarding what I said before, think of it this way. I'm not reminded that I was molested every moment of every day. I can avoid places, people, things that remind me of being molested to some degree. Rape is something that I only had to go through once. But I feel like I'm constantly being subjected to some sort of greater rape on a massive scale. The spiritual kind, not the physical one. I feel raped every time I watch a pregnant woman call over a staff member at Walgreens to help her retrieve a bottle of baby formula that's been locked up to prevent shoplifting. I feel raped every time a cashier holds a man's food stamp card up to the light to prove its authenticity. I feel raped every time I'm walking through the park on a beautiful day and I try to find somewhere to sit down, only to discover that every bench is segmented so that Hobo Richie can't lie down and sleep there. It's a constant 24/7 rape of the soul that just never seems to end. Ash, I want Don Julio. I'm with the band. The girl did retire eventually, primarily because she had found love. His name was Benny Drill. He was a rapper too, but he wasn't like the other ones. Benny Drill had grown up in a small town in Mississippi, not far away from Gary Blackwood's old hunting grounds. His childhood home was not a McMansion like many of these other white rappers grew up in, but a trailer filled with rifles. He wrote diss tracks about the shadow people he had fought in the astral realm after chugging a bottle of Robitussin. Sometimes they would venture out into the wilderness together. He would ride on her back, and together they'd fly through the forest. He rarely ever smiled or spoke outside of interviews, but in these moments he did. He ducked down just in time to avoid being smacked in the face or flat out decapitated by a massive branch, then rise back up laughing and hollering triumphantly. When she walked into the venue on the night of Benny Drill's concert, everybody stopped and stared, but they looked at her with awe, not fear. A group of teenagers asked her where she had bought animatronic wings that looked so real. "They even move, see?" squealed one girl who was covered in fake blood. "I made them myself," she replied. In a room full of people dressed in costumes, she attended the show in her truest form. Benny Drill stepped on stage. He wore a black cowboy hat, embellished with a silver ram skull, and a pair of camouflage pants with dark red, almost black stains on them. They were given to him by his new girlfriend, who had told him that they once belonged to Gary. His entire body was covered in tattoos, but there was one that glowed under the UV light. It read Bathsheba, the girl's real name, or at least the most accurate translation of it. Sweat dripping down from his dark hair, he began to recite the lyrics to his latest song. "Aww, Benny Drill on the fucking mic. Drive my car off the ledge because I ride with you. And if I die tonight, know that I'ma die with you. I believe in you, baby, seeing you in the trees. I just want to hear you say that you believe in me. I'll go to hell, baby, if you go with me, because I'm the Mothman. You're my banshee." The crowd erupted. Bathsheba knew that eventually Benny Drill would pass away of natural causes. And then she would have to learn how to face death in a way that she never really had to before. It was funny. She'd been surrounded by death ever since she had come into existence, but she still had no idea how to cope with grief because she had always been the one who was in control. It was terrifying to think about the reality that she would eventually have to let him go. But she was happy, and that was all that really mattered, even if the time frame of that temporary joy was equivalent to 1 millisecond of the average human being's life. Ash and Sam reunite. In the 15 years that had passed since Gina Steinem had discovered a threatening note taped to the door of her dorm room, Triple Sam had willingly exited society completely. Thon moved to an isolated cabin in the middle of the Vermont forest and cut contact with almost everyone who Thon had ever known. This day, however, Thon had a guest. Ash, who had since become a successful stripper in Florida, would come out to see Sam occasionally. Well, she had always been the highest-paid dancer in every club that she had ever stripped at, and she still maintained that title at the age of 34. She was aware that she was playing out the final act of her nightlife days. And once that door closed forever, where would she go? There was a massive gap in her resume. She hadn't worked a normal job in over a decade. She had aged well despite the lifestyle she had participated in throughout her teens and 20s, but the men craved young blood. Running away to become a stripper was Ash's backup plan. She never expected that she would live this long, and so she never thought far ahead enough into the future to create a second backup plan in case her first one failed. The two were sitting outside, looking up at the wide-open sky, sipping on a pina colada from the local grocery store which came in a frozen packet. Ash turned to ask Sam a question. Are you happy with what you've made of your life? Well, in my point of view, there's really no way of winning. You just lose to various degrees. You can move to New York City and live this gorgeous life. You can dance in a cabaret and own a pet peacock, install a fucking fountain of champagne in your living room, and marry Alan Dershowitz for the money. And he'd probably take you on these crazy vacations, and you'd see the 7 wonders of the world, but who knows? Maybe the only guy who would have ever really loved you lived inside a trailer park in rural Alabama, and he shot himself because he never got to meet somebody like you. Well, how do you know you've made the right choice then? How do you decide what you want to do with the life that's been given to you? That's the thing, you don't. There's no such thing as the right choice. There's only a million shades of wrong. I think people waste their lives sitting around worrying about this kind of stuff. They get stuck and never end up doing anything. Just live it. Enjoy it. That's all you can really do. A vulture circled overhead and landed on the branch of an eastern cottonwood tree, the size of a skyscraper. It cocked its head as if to question Sam's statement before flying away into the distance. Last of the Flop Tropicans. The anniversary of Vincent Turson's death passed every year, around Mother's Day. This time Sam was visiting Indra for the weekend. Thon was awoken by the sound of mumbling in Kazakh coming from beneath the floorboards. Sam couldn't make out exactly what the men underground were saying, but Thon thought Thon had caught one word, which loosely translated to destroy. As Thon rolled out of bed, still in a daze, Thon heard a familiar pinging sound coming from Shiz's phone. It was Vincent's mother messaging Shim. Thon had given her Shiz's number a while ago, feeling sorry for the lonely old woman. She had no one to talk to. She'd long since been exiled from town for creating the spawn of Satan, as the locals called him. Before Thon had the chance to check what she'd sent him, Indra burst into the room. Honey, I made a reservation for the whole family at this Kazakh brunch spot nearby. I heard they have delicious barsak. Get up and get dressed. Mother, the apocalypse is coming. The Kazakhstanis are building tunnels underground. I heard them. I have to mold this situation before it's too late. Indra sighed. Did you take too much Benadryl before you went to bed again? You aren't making any sense. Kazakhstan is our greatest ally. About a month later, Iran dropped a bomb on the United States. It was the single deadliest weapon ever invented to date. It wiped out everything in a 5,000-mile radius, destroying parts of Canada and Mexico as well. The Americans had been warned repeatedly that this would happen if they continued to fund Kazakhstan's war crimes, but they did not take the threat seriously. Every single building in the country was reduced to a pile of rubble. Out of the millions of men, women, and children who perished, most of them were fortunate enough to die instantly. Some wandered around the hellish landscape half alive. They experienced agonizing pain before they finally collapsed, but in a way they were lucky that they couldn't see. The flesh on their face had melted and turned into something that resembled black leather. They were unable to scream as their vocal cords had dissolved. They made a buzzing sound like a swarm of locusts, trying to remember the word for water. Some of those who were vaporized lived on as human shadows, etched in stone, standing in the same spot forever. The outline of a figure dressed in a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses was imprinted on the side of the Psycho's family home in Portland. Around 2 miles away, a single survivor emerged from the ruins of the Wonder Ballroom. Mother Muffin Muncha gasped as she climbed out from underneath around 100 pounds worth of debris and dirt. She removed her pastry-shaped costume. The inside was lined with polyethylene, shielding her from the blast. Standing on the small mountain with her 2 intact, shapely legs, she stared out into the distance. Her 30-inch orange bust-down was the same color as the sky. Awakening of the Beast. When 15-year-old Andrew Cunningham came back into his body, he couldn't remember how to use it at first. It was as if he had been jolted back to life by 1,000 volts of electricity, delivered straight to his heart. He lay on the cold hardwood floor, slack-jawed, with the glassy-eyed expression of a Vietnam veteran who had just witnessed his buddy get his leg blown off in front of him. Slowly, the details started to come back to him. It was March 20th, 1999. He was inside his so-called friend Keith's garage, who was currently sitting on a dusty couch trying to stifle his laugh. Dude, you kind of broke my bong. You better buy me a new one to replace it. Andrew sat up. He looked down at his hands, which were covered in small lacerations. Surely enough, he was surrounded by colorful crystalline shards. His glassy-eyed expression started to shift to one of pure rage. I broke your bong? I need to buy you a new one to replace it? Are you going to buy me a new brain to replace the one you just broke in fucking half with whatever the actual fuck you laced my weed with? Is this your idea of a prank? You're a real sicko. You know that? Dude, it's just some weird Mexican shit I got from the smoke shop. It's called salvia or something. If it was gonna kill you, they wouldn't sell it. Andrew lunged towards Keith, his fist mere inches away from the older boy's smirking face. All right, Jesus, man. Calm down, I'm sorry. Andrew snatched the mysterious bag of plant matter out of Keith's hand. He hopped on his bike and started to pedal away, turning back to glare at Keith one more time before disappearing from his line of vision. Andrew headed home and went straight to his room, where he promptly collapsed on the bed to catch up on some much-needed sleep. It was true. His supposed best friend was a conniving douche. He was suffering from yet another acne outbreak, and Jessica from art class thought he was weird. Still, he was 15 years old in 1999, and nothing could possibly be that bad. Sure, O.J. Simpson was on the loose, Kurt Cobain was dead, but at least that meant he wouldn't live to ruin his legacy by being really annoying and performative on Blather, or attempting to stay relevant at age 59 by collaborating with shitty white rappers. But Jeffrey Dahmer had been caught, and for one more month, Columbine would just be the name of some boring flower in the garden that Andrew's mother was so proud of. And even after that, he would still get to see the sun rise up between the Twin Towers from his bedroom window every morning when he woke up for school. So he rested his head on the pillow and dreamt of a better future, one that didn't involve bloodthirsty primordial entities from the underworld, or hobos with fecal fixations. This time, he got to write the story. And in his version of it, Jessica was madly in love with him, and he had received a copy of Dune 2, Hell on Earth, for Christmas. Andrew always fell asleep with the television on. This particular night, an androgynous figure with pale skin and dark hair was being interviewed by a youth pastor. The pastor was really grilling this strange individual, but the freak would simply not back down or admit defeat. A lot of people say that you're a Satanist. Is that true? Rock and roll is my gospel. Some people say my lyrics are a bad influence on the youth of today. And to those people, I'd say that the Bible is full of stories about rape, murder, and adultery. Does that mean the Bible is responsible for breeding a generation of cold-blooded killers? In your songs, you call yourself the devil. You dress up like a corpse. Do you really think that sends out a positive message to kids? How can you blame their parents for calling you a Satan worshiper? Well, Lucifer was an angel once, too. The figure, who had piercing gray eyes, turned to face the camera head-on. Andrew continued to doze peacefully, undisturbed by the background noise. The man, if he was in fact a man and not something else entirely, did something completely unexpected. He began to crawl out of the television, one spindly limb emerging after the other. He moved with a strange sort of grace and elegance, like a long-legged spider. Carefully, he opened the window and slipped into the front yard. He moved so silently that he did not even alert the dogs. He walked past the old tire swing in Andrew's front yard, across the road, and into the row of tall trees on the other side of the street. The leaves appeared to swallow him whole, and he disappeared completely, almost as if he had never been there at all. Suddenly, something hit the ground in the distance and exploded. The sky flashed a brilliant white, as if God had taken a screenshot of the entire world, and then faded to a rusty shade of auburn. So powerful was the impact of the blast that a fragment of the Twin Towers went flying through Andrew's window, shattering it to pieces. The scrap of metal hit him in the head. For the third and final time that day, Andrew Cunningham woke up.